Sometimes you wake up and feel heavy. There's no real reason you can point to. Nothing obvious went wrong, but something feels off. Your chest is tight. You move slower. The smallest task feels like a mountain. That's when naming the emotion can make a difference. Call it what it is: sadness, frustration, guilt, shame, fear, loneliness. When you name what you're feeling, you get a bit of distance from it. You stop being tangled up inside of it. Instead of drowning, you're watching the waves from the shore. You're not fine. But now you know what kind of not fine it is, and that makes it easier to figure out what to do next. Say you're working late again. You didn't want to, but you felt like you had to. You told yourself you'd stop at 6. Now it's 8:30 and your dinner is cold on the stove. You're not just tired, you're resentful. But you didn't notice it until now. You were so focused on getting through the emails and checking off boxes that the emotions stayed quiet in the background. But it was there, tapping at the door. When you stop for a second and ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? And the answer is resentment. It tells you something useful. You didn't want to keep working. You felt obligated. Maybe you're doing more than your share. Maybe you don't feel like you can say no. That's important information. Now you know where to look if you want things to change. Or maybe you're lying in bed, phone in hand, scrolling. You've seen the same post 3 times already, but you keep scrolling anyway. And then you realize your throat is tight. You're comparing yourself. You're not feeling inspired or curious. You're feeling envy. And under that, maybe shame. You haven't done as much as that person. You don't look like them. You don't seem as happy. You're not proud of this feeling, but there it is. If you can say it, I feel envious, then it's not driving you in the dark anymore. You've got your hands on the wheel again. Emotions don't go away just because you ignore them. If anything, they grow in the dark. They shape your decisions. They shift your tone when you talk to someone. They change the way you see things. If you feel anxious, the world feels full of danger. If you feel ashamed, you might assume people are judging you. If you feel grief, even silence can feel too loud. But if you name the feeling, you pull it into the light. That doesn't make it pleasant, but it does make it more manageable. It's the difference between walking through fog and walking with a flashlight. Let's say you're at a family dinner. People are talking, laughing, passing dishes around. You smile when people look at you. You answer questions politely, but something feels off. You're not engaged. You're not enjoying it. You might assume you're just tired or distracted, but maybe you're feeling disconnected or bored, or maybe you're quietly angry about something that happened earlier. It's easy to write it off, but when you name it, you understand what's going on. If it's boredom, maybe you're not interested in the same topics. If it's anger, maybe someone crossed a line and you didn't say anything. If it's disconnection, maybe you're missing deeper conversations. Those are very different issues, but they can all feel the same on the surface. That's why naming the emotion matters. A lot of us never learned how to do this. Maybe emotions weren't talked about much growing up. Maybe showing feelings was seen as weak. Maybe you were praised for being easygoing or quiet or strong, which really just meant you didn't show much. Over time, you learn to keep emotions out of sight. You push them down. You power through. You get good at saying, I'm fine. And in some situations, that's useful. It helps you get through hard days. But it can also leave you cut off from yourself. You might know you're uncomfortable, but not why. You might feel off, but not know what to do about it. Naming the emotion is a way to reconnect. It's also a way to speak up. Imagine your partner says something that hurts your feelings. You could brush it off and keep going. Or you could take a breath and say, I feel hurt. That's not an accusation. It's not a demand. It's a fact. You're not guessing how they feel. You're not telling them what they did wrong. You're just naming what's true for you. That's powerful. It gives them something real to respond to. And it gives you a starting point for a real conversation. In a workplace, the same thing applies. If you're stressed, it helps to know if that stress comes from overwhelm, uncertainty, or feeling unappreciated. Each of those has a different solution. If you're overwhelmed, maybe you need help with workload. If you're uncertain, maybe you need clearer expectations. If you feel unappreciated, maybe you need recognition. But if you just say you're stressed, it doesn't point to a clear next step. Naming the specific emotion makes a vague problem into a clear one. There are also times when you feel more than one thing at once. That's normal. You might feel proud and nervous. You might feel relieved and sad. You might feel grateful and frustrated. It's okay to hold more than one emotion at the same time. You don't have to pick just one, but you do have to name them if you want to understand what's really going on. Imagine you're leaving a job you've had for years. People are congratulating you. You smile, say thank you. And you do feel excited, but you also feel anxious and maybe a little grief. Those are all real. If you only focus on the excitement, you might wonder why you feel uneasy. But if you name all the emotions, it makes sense. You're stepping into something new and you're letting go of something familiar. There's risk and reward. That's a full picture. Sometimes the emotion you name is one you don't want to admit. Maybe you feel jealous of a friend, or bitter about someone else's success, or regret about a choice you made years ago. These emotions can feel ugly, but they're also human. You're not the only one who's ever felt them. Naming them doesn't mean you like them. It means you're being honest. And honesty is the only way to move forward. Other times, the emotion you name might surprise you. You might think you're angry, but under the anger is fear. You might think you're fine, but under the calm is loneliness. You might think you're just tired, but under the fatigue is sadness. Emotions can wear disguises. That's why it helps to pause and check. Ask yourself, what's really going on here? It might take a few tries. You might guess wrong the first time. That's okay. Keep asking, keep naming. It gets easier with practice. There's no need to perform. You don't have to explain yourself to anyone unless you want to. This isn't about being dramatic or making a scene. It's about being honest with yourself. That honesty can be quiet. You can name the emotion silently in your mind. You can write it down. You can whisper it under your breath. What matters is that you say it clearly enough to hear yourself. Sometimes you don't have a word right away. That's okay too. You can start with a description. I feel tight in my chest. I feel like hiding. I feel like something bad is about to happen. That's the start of naming. From there, you can look for the word that fits. Maybe it's fear, maybe it's shame, maybe it's dread. Finding the word is like finding a key. Once you have it, things begin to open up. You don't have to solve everything at once. You just have to know what you're feeling. That's enough to start. You want to succeed. That's normal. Most people aim for progress. They want to do well at work, keep their relationships strong, stay healthy, and maybe even build something they're proud of. So you start asking questions like, how do I win? Or what do successful people do? You make lists, you set goals, you chase results. But sometimes that approach gets you stuck. You focus so hard on doing things right that you miss the simple, obvious traps that pull you off track. That's where inverting the problem helps. Instead of asking how to win, ask how to lose. Then make sure you don't do those things. Think about a simple example, staying healthy. If you ask, how do I stay healthy? You might get 100 answers. Eat more vegetables, go to the gym, get 8 hours of sleep, walk 10,000 steps a day, take supplements, avoid sugar, drink water. It's a long list. It can feel overwhelming. You might not even know where to start. But if you flip it and ask, how do I destroy my health? The answers come fast. Sleep 3 hours a night, eat fast food every day, never move your body, smoke, drink too much, live with constant stress and ignore it. That's a clear list. You don't need to be a doctor to understand it. Now you know what to avoid. Even if you don't have the perfect health routine, just steering clear of the obvious mistakes can put you in a much better place. This works in relationships too. Instead of asking, how do I build a great relationship? Ask, how do I ruin a relationship? The answers are simple. Lie, ignore the other person, dismiss their feelings, refuse to apologize, always need to be right, never listen, be unreliable. Those behaviors will erode trust fast. Avoiding them is already a big step towards something solid. You don't have to be a perfect partner, you just have to not be a destructive one. Inverting the problem is useful because it cuts through noise. It brings your attention to what matters most. It also reduces perfectionism. You stop chasing an ideal and start avoiding clear mistakes. That's more manageable. You don't need to know the perfect move. You just need to know what not to do. In the workplace, this mindset can clarify your focus. Say you're managing a team and want them to perform well. You can spend hours reading about leadership strategies and motivational techniques. Or you can ask, how do I lose the respect of my team? That's a shorter list. Micromanage. Blame others when things go wrong. Take credit for their work. Withhold information. Change direction without warning. Be inconsistent. Now you have something to work with. Just avoid those behaviors and you're already doing better than many. Same goes for personal productivity. If you want to be effective, asking, how do I get more done, might take you down a rabbit hole. Dozens of apps, time blocking, habit stacks, color-coded calendars. But if you ask, how do I waste my day? It's more straightforward. Keep your phone within reach. Check email constantly. Multitask. Start without a plan. Say yes to everything. These are easy to spot. Once you know them, you can build guardrails. You might still have a few unproductive hours, but you're less likely to lose the whole day. The method works even for long-term goals. Take investing, for example. You could read for years about market strategy and portfolio theory, or you could ask, how do I lose money in the market? Gamble. Buy what's trending without research. Sell in a panic. Ignore fees. Take advice from people who have nothing to lose. These behaviors are easy to avoid once you recognize them. You don't have to predict the market. You just have to not self-sabotage. One reason this inversion works is because mistakes tend to be more universal than successes. There are many ways to succeed, and they often depend on context. But failure has patterns. If 100 people lose money on a business idea, they often made similar choices. Ignored costs, overestimated demand, underestimated competition. Failed to test the product. These are common traps. Dodging them doesn't guarantee success, but it keeps you alive long enough to figure out your own version of winning. Let's say you're building something new, a project, a product, a business. You're unsure about your next move. Instead of asking, what's the best strategy, try, what would kill this? If the answer is ignoring customer feedback, then you make sure to listen. If it's running out of money, then you keep your expenses low. If it's building something nobody wants, then you validate the idea early. You don't need to see the whole path. You just need to see the cliffs and avoid them. Inversion can also help with emotional regulation. If you want to stay calm under pressure, you could try to find the best breathing technique or mindset. But ask, what causes me to lose control? And the answer may be obvious. Skipping meals, not sleeping, letting small irritations pile up, not expressing boundaries. Recognizing these inputs lets you manage them. You don't need to become a monk. You just need to avoid the fuel that feeds your worst reactions. There's also a psychological benefit to inversion. Focusing on failure makes you more honest. When you only ask how to win, it's tempting to imagine the best-case scenario. You picture yourself motivated, energized, making all the right moves. That version of you is inspiring, but not always real. But when you ask how you might lose, you're forced to reckon with your actual tendencies, the habits that drag you down, the distractions that eat your time, the excuses you use. That honesty can be uncomfortable, but it's also useful. You're not pretending, you're preparing. Inversion also works in social settings. Say you want to be a better friend. You could try to be more generous, more thoughtful, more present. Or you could ask, what makes someone a bad friend? The list writes itself. Being unavailable, only reaching out when you need something, talking about yourself constantly, disappearing when things get hard. These are behaviors you can check yourself for. You don't need a 10-point plan to be a good friend. You just need to not be a bad one. The same applies to decision-making. When you're stuck between options, ask, which one increases the risk of failure? That doesn't mean you should avoid risk altogether, but it helps you see which path has hidden traps. You might realize one option depends too heavily on luck, or another locks you into a long-term commitment with little return. Identifying the losing move makes the winning move clearer by contrast. Sometimes the win isn't obvious. Life doesn't always give you a clear scoreboard, but loss leaves a mark. You can often feel when something is slipping. You're overwhelmed, confused, frustrated. That's a cue to pause and ask, what am I doing that's making this worse? That's inversion, and it can be more helpful than asking what to do next. You might not know how to fix everything, but you can usually spot one thing to stop doing. That's enough to start turning things around. This way of thinking doesn't mean you avoid ambition. It just means you take a grounded path to it. You don't chase shiny answers. You stay alert for traps. You build by subtraction. It's not always glamorous, but it works. You win by not losing. That's enough. You see the dirty dish in the sink. You walk past it. You notice the email sitting in your inbox. You mark it unread again. There's a sock on the floor, a form you need to sign, a light bulb that needs replacing. Small tasks stack up, not because they're hard, but because you delay them. You tell yourself you'll get to them later, but later never comes. These tiny delays don't feel like much, but they add up. The sink gets full, the inbox gets messy, the to-do list becomes noise. That's where the 5-minute rule comes in. If it takes less than 5 minutes, do it now. This rule sounds simple. It is. That's the point. It gives you a filter. You don't have to think too hard, you don't have to write it down, you don't have to schedule it. You just ask one thing. Will it take less than 5 minutes? If the answer is yes, do it now. You wake up, your bed is unmade, you hesitate, then you remember the rule. It takes less than 5 minutes. So you pull the blanket tight, fluff the pillow, and straighten the sheet. Done. That's one thing off the list already. You've started the day with a completed task. Not because you were feeling motivated, but because the rule gave you a default. You didn't negotiate with yourself, you just did it. Later, you open your laptop and see a message you forgot to respond to yesterday. It needs one line. Got it, thanks. You could skip it. You could come back later. But that's how small things become stress. Instead, you type the reply and hit send. Less than 5 minutes, one more task closed. No buildup, no guilt. You move on. The rule works because procrastination isn't always about big tasks. Often it starts with small ones. When you delay small actions, they pile up. Then they stop feeling small. A few dirty dishes becomes a sink full. A few unread emails becomes an inbox that feels out of control. The task itself doesn't grow, but your resistance to it does. When you follow the 5-minute rule, you cut the cycle. You never let the pile form. You don't need motivation for this. That's important. Motivation is unreliable. Some days you have it, some days you don't. Discipline is more stable, but it takes time to build. The 5-minute rule gives you something easier, momentum. You start moving. One small task leads to another. You clear your desk. You send the text you've been avoiding. You book the appointment. None of it is hard, it just needed to start. Picture your day as a hallway. Every task you avoid becomes an object in that hallway. A coat on the floor, a box in the corner, a chair blocking the way. At first, you can step around them, but soon the path is blocked. You can't move freely. It starts to wear on you. Each task becomes a weight. Doing a 5-minute task now is like picking up the coat and hanging it where it belongs. You make space. You keep the hallway clear. This rule also works well in shared spaces. In a house, one person's delay becomes someone else's burden. You don't take the trash out because it's almost full, but not quite. You think someone else will do it. Meanwhile, the bin starts to smell. The next person gets annoyed. Friction builds, but if you just take the bag out, it's done. It took 2 minutes. You kept the space clean. You kept the mood steady. You can use the rule with habits too. Let's say you want to start stretching every day. That can feel like a big shift, but you don't need a full plan. You just need to start. Set a timer for 5 minutes. Touch your toes, roll your shoulders, do a few lunges. 5 minutes pass. You're done. If you want to keep going, you can. If not, you still showed up. That matters more than waiting for the perfect moment to begin. The same goes for creative work. Writing a novel sounds huge, but opening the document and writing one paragraph doesn't. That's less than 5 minutes. That's a start. The 5-minute rule doesn't solve the whole problem. It just removes the barrier between you and starting. That's usually the hardest part. Once you begin, momentum takes over. There's a trap people fall into with to-do lists. They put everything on the list, even the tasks that take 1 minute. The list gets long. The brain gets overwhelmed. You feel like you're behind, even though most of the items would take no time at all. With the 5-minute rule, those tasks never hit the list. You handle them on site. The list stays lean. You stop feeling buried. Of course, not everything fits in 5 minutes. Some tasks are bigger. Some require planning or coordination. The rule doesn't apply to those. It's not about solving your whole workload. It's about clearing the clutter around it. Think of it like keeping your workspace clean. You're not doing the big project. You're just moving the coffee cup, throwing away the wrapper, wiping the desk. These small moves make room for the bigger work. You might worry that stopping to handle small tasks will break your flow. That's a valid concern. If you're deep into focused work, you can ignore the 5-minute rule temporarily. Just make a mental note or drop a quick reminder somewhere. But for most of the day, you're not in deep flow. You're shifting between tasks, responding to things, handling logistics. That's where the rule shines. It keeps those transition moments clean. It's also a good way to reset when you feel stuck. You've been scrolling for 20 minutes, you're drifting. You know you should get back to work, but you don't know where to begin. Pick one 5-minute task. Answer a text, put away the laundry, sweep the floor. It doesn't matter what it is, just complete something. That tiny act of completion resets your brain. It reminds you that progress is possible. Some people set timers. They use 5 minutes as a limit. They say, I'll just clean for 5 minutes, or I'll write for 5 minutes. That works too. It lowers the bar. You're not committing to an hour, you're just starting. And once you start, you often keep going. But even if you stop, you've done something. That's the key. Something beats nothing. You don't need to track this. You don't need a special app. You don't need a productivity system. The power of the rule is in its simplicity. You see a small task. You ask, will this take less than 5 minutes? If yes, do it now. That's the entire system. It works because it reduces friction. You don't think, you don't delay, you just act. And that action clears space. It builds a sense of control. Your space gets cleaner, your list gets shorter, your mind gets quieter. You stop carrying around a backlog of little things. You stop telling yourself, I'll get to it later, and start living in the present moment. Not in theory, not in motivation, but in action. You try something and it doesn't work. Maybe it's a pitch that gets rejected, a conversation that goes sideways, a plan that falls apart. Your first instinct might be to say, I failed. That phrase feels final, like a stamp. It suggests the story is over. You tried, you lost, now move on. But that reaction hides the value inside the moment. What you really got was feedback. You got information. Something didn't land, something broke. That doesn't mean you're done. It means you've learned something you didn't know before. That shift from I failed to I learned changes how you move forward. Take someone applying for a job. They send in the application, go through the interview, and then get the rejection email. If they say, I failed, it frames the whole experience as wasted. But if they say, I learned, they start asking questions. Did I speak clearly? Did I understand the role? Was there a better way to explain my experience? Now they're in a different place. They're not stuck. They're adjusting. Failure often feels personal, but it's usually situational. You didn't get the job, but that doesn't mean you're not good at what you do. Maybe the team had a different need. Maybe your strengths didn't match that exact moment. Or maybe you needed more preparation. That's feedback. It's specific. It can be acted on. Calling it failure suggests identity. Calling it feedback suggests data. One locks you in. The other moves you forward. Imagine a kid learning to ride a bike. They fall once, they fall again. Nobody says they've failed. Everyone expects them to fall. That's part of learning. Each fall gives new feedback. Balance needs work. Steering too sharp, feet too far forward. With each mistake, they adjust. Eventually, they ride. Adults forget that. We treat early tries as verdicts instead of steps. But it's the same process. You test something, you watch what happens, you change. That's how learning works. In a work setting, this mindset matters even more. Say you launch a product and it flops. Sales are flat. Reviews are cold. It's easy to feel like it was a waste. But if you reframe it, you start asking better questions. Where did people lose interest? What part of the messaging missed the mark? Did the offer solve a real problem? These aren't emotional questions. They're practical. They give you direction. Every part that didn't work is a clue. Something in the copy didn't resonate. The price point felt too high. The value wasn't clear. Those are all signals. You don't ignore them. You use them. This applies to conversations too. You try to give feedback to a colleague. They get defensive. The tone shifts. The moment turns tense. You walk away thinking, that went badly. That's one way to see it. Another is, that gave me new data. Now you know that approach doesn't land well. Maybe the timing was wrong. Maybe the tone needed adjusting. Maybe they don't trust you enough yet. You've learned something about the dynamic. Next time, you can come in differently. Not every mistake is your fault, but every mistake teaches something. Even if the problem came from someone else, you still learned how the system reacts. You saw the edge. You found the blind spot. That information is useful. You can build around it. You can prepare better. You can change how you show up in similar moments. Failure feels heavy when it's tied to identity. If you say, "I'm not good at this," or "I'm not cut out for this," you turn one experience into a fixed label. But if you say, "I didn't get the result I wanted," you leave room for growth. You keep the door open. That's the difference between a dead end and a detour. Same road, different frame. Athletes understand this well. A missed shot isn't just a miss, it's a signal. Was the form off? Was the timing wrong? Was the decision poor? Every miss holds feedback. The ones who improve fastest are the ones who study those misses. They don't take them personally, they treat them like film. Slow it down, watch it again, look for what's off, then adjust. That approach works everywhere. Business, art, relationships, you name it. You can apply this to writing. You send a draft, the client says it's not what they wanted, you feel deflated, you thought it was solid, but buried in that response is information. Maybe the tone was too formal, maybe the structure didn't fit their audience, maybe you misunderstood the goal. That's not failure, that's a brief. The next version is sharper. You're now working with more data. Learning from failure doesn't mean sugarcoating it. You can admit something didn't work. You can feel disappointed, but the key is to stay open. Ask what the moment is teaching you. Sometimes the lesson is about your skill. Sometimes it's about timing. Sometimes it's about reading people better. But there's always something to learn. The moment you find it, the loss becomes a step. Think of someone who starts a business and it folds within a year. Revenue stayed flat, customers didn't stick around, money ran out. It's easy to mark that as failure. But if they step back and reflect, they might see where the cracks formed. They priced too low. They tried to appeal to everyone. They didn't build in public, so nobody knew they existed. Those aren't character flaws. They're tactical errors. Each one gives them a new lens. The next time they price for value, they pick a tighter niche. They show their work. Suddenly, the second attempt looks very different. This isn't about being blindly positive. It's about being accurate. Failure as a label hides the details. Feedback reveals them. It takes the moment apart. It lets you examine the parts. You stop asking, "What's wrong with me?" and start asking, "What went wrong in the process?" That's a better question. It leads to better answers. Even in personal growth, this frame helps. Say you're trying to change a habit. You want to wake up earlier. You try and you hit snooze 5 days in a row. You tell yourself you failed. But if you reframe, you ask, why didn't this work? Maybe you stayed up too late. Maybe your phone is too close to your bed. Maybe you need to prep the night before. Now you're learning. Now you're adjusting. That's forward motion. You can't learn from something you refuse to look at. Calling something a failure is often a way to stop looking. It hurts, so you close it off. But if you treat it as feedback, you stay curious, you keep it open, you go back in, you say, what's useful here? That question is quiet. It's not dramatic, but it's the one that helps you grow. One small insight at a time. You work hard, you check off tasks, you stay busy, but at the end of the week, you feel like not much has changed. The hours were full, but the progress was thin. That's a sign you're spreading your effort too wide. You're treating everything like it matters equally. It doesn't. Some actions move the needle. Most don't. The 80-20 rule helps you see that clearly. It says 80% of your results come from 20% of your actions. If that's true, and it often is, then your job is simple. Find the 20%, then focus hard on it. This doesn't mean working less. It means working smarter. You're not trying to avoid effort. You're trying to direct it. Picture a row of 10 tasks. You give each one the same time and energy, but only 2 of them actually drive outcomes. The other 8 keep you busy without real payoff. Now imagine you spend twice as much time on those 2 that matter. Instead of 10 hours spread thin, you put 8 hours into the ones that move things forward. You'll get more done with fewer steps, not because you worked harder, because you chose better. Start by looking at your week. What tasks gave you visible results? Not just the ones that felt satisfying, but the ones that created change. A client said yes, a process got faster, a decision became clearer, a new lead came in. That's your 20%. It might surprise you. Often the biggest results come from work that didn't feel that hard at the time. A quick email, a 5-minute phone call, a follow-up message, a decision you stopped putting off. These don't always feel impressive, but they move things forward. That's what counts. Now look at the percent that filled your calendar but didn't do much else. Meetings with no decisions, reports nobody read, tweaks nobody noticed, admin work that didn't need to be yours. These aren't useless, but they're low leverage. They give you the feeling of work without the impact. That's where the drain happens. You think you're at full capacity, but most of your energy is going to things that won't matter in a week. That creates burnout without progress. If you're not sure what your high-value actions are, track what leads to outcomes. In sales, it might be follow-ups, not cold outreach. In writing, it might be publishing, not planning. In design, it might be testing, not tweaking. Every field has its own version. The key is to stop guessing and start noticing. Results leave a trail. Follow it. This also works at a team level. Say you're managing a group and you want better output. You don't need everyone doing more. You need everyone doing more of the right things. One person might be great at solving client issues quickly. Another might be good at closing deals. Another might write copy that converts. Those are high-leverage skills. Protect them. Don't bury them in low-impact tasks. Don't take your best writer and put them in meetings all day. Don't give your best closer an admin backlog. Let people double down on what they do well. That's how teams get sharper. At a personal level, this shift can feel uncomfortable. You're trained to treat work like a checklist. Finish one thing, move to the next. But high-leverage work isn't always tidy. It's not about clearing the board. It's about making a dent. That might mean leaving low-value tasks unfinished. That might mean saying no to work that looks responsible but leads nowhere. That's hard if you're used to measuring your worth by how busy you are. But being busy and being effective aren't the same. Say you run your own business. You do sales, support, product, content, all of it. Your week fills fast, but most of your revenue comes from one thing: deep client work. That's the 20%. Writing proposals, running workshops, delivering results. Everything else supports that. So you look at your calendar and start cutting. You automate the inbox. You hand off small tasks. You stop saying yes to things that don't feed the core. Now you have space. Same hours, better return. Even inside a single project, the rule applies. Take writing. You might spend hours fiddling with fonts, formatting paragraphs, adjusting margins, but the biggest shift comes from clarity of thought. One well-placed edit can sharpen a whole argument. One strong sentence can carry a page. The structure matters more than the styling. The 20% is in the thinking, not the trimming. Know where to spend your time. In health, this rule shows up too. You might be doing 10 different things: new workout routines, different diets, more supplements, fancy tracking tools. But the core usually stays the same. Get good sleep, move often, eat mostly whole food. Those 3 cover most of the benefit. Everything else is marginal. If you get those wrong, the rest won't fix it. That's the 20%. Focus there. One mistake people make is thinking the 20% has to be flashy. It doesn't. Sometimes the high-impact work is boring. Sending invoices, following up, updating your site, reviewing the numbers. It's not fun, but it creates results. Don't confuse excitement with value. Look at the outcome, not the feeling. There's also a trap in perfectionism. You might spend hours trying to get something just right: a deck, a post, a design. But if nobody sees it, or if it doesn't lead to action, it didn't matter. Sometimes a rough version now is better than a perfect one later, especially if the rough version teaches you something. The faster you get feedback, the faster you can adjust. That's another version of the 80-20 rule. 80% of your learning comes from 20% of your output. The sooner you ship, the sooner you learn. This mindset also helps with burnout. When you do low-impact work all day, you end up tired but unsatisfied. You gave your energy, but you didn't get traction. That wears you down. But if you spend your energy on high-impact work, even short days can feel productive. You see the results. You feel the progress. That builds momentum. Sometimes the hardest part is letting go of the rest. You've been told to be thorough, to be organized, to handle it all. But you don't need to be great at everything. You need to be great at the things that matter most. The rest can be ignored, automated, or delegated. That's not laziness, that's strategy. You don't need a complex system. Just stop and ask, what few actions drive most of my results? Write them down, protect time for them, track them, review them. It's not about cutting corners, it's about cutting noise. You only have so much attention, spend it where it counts. Results don't come from doing everything. They come from doing the right things repeatedly. You hear something that stings. Maybe it's a sharp comment in a meeting. Maybe it's a tone from someone you care about. Maybe it's a message that feels off. Your body reacts before your mind catches up. You feel heat in your face, tightness in your chest. Words rush forward. You want to reply fast, defend yourself, correct them, fire back. That's the moment, right there. 5 seconds of space makes the difference. If you can pause, even briefly, you take back control. You let the feeling pass through before it drives your behavior. Power doesn't always show up as action. Sometimes it shows up as restraint. The urge to react is strong because it feels immediate. Something happens and you respond. It's natural, but it's not always helpful. Most emotional reactions don't come from a clear place. They come from a spike: anger, fear, shame, pride. Those emotions aren't wrong, they're signals. But if you act on them too quickly, you skip the step where you understand what they're trying to tell you. You make the move before you know where the board is. Picture a conversation with a friend. They say something that lands wrong. Maybe they joke about something personal. You feel the sting. You could snap back. You could say something cutting. That would feel good for a second. Then the moment would shift. The temperature in the room would change. What started as a joke would become a fight. Instead, you pause. 5 seconds. You breathe. You check in with yourself. Was that about me, or did I bring something into this? Do I need to respond, or do I need to clarify? That short pause gives you options. You can ask, what did you mean by that? Or you can let it go if it wasn't worth holding. Either way, you stay in control. In a workplace, this matters even more. Say your team misses a deadline. You're frustrated. You feel let down. You're tempted to fire off a message that shows it. You want them to feel the urgency, but a reactive message creates tension. It narrows the conversation. It puts people on edge. They get defensive. Communication breaks down. A pause changes that. You take 5 seconds. You name the feeling: disappointed, stressed, concerned. Then you ask yourself, what do I want to come from this message? That small delay makes the message sharper. Instead of venting, you give direction. You keep the relationship intact. You still express urgency, but you do it without damage. Reactivity often comes from habit. You've learned over time to protect yourself with speed. Don't give anyone space to hurt you. Don't let things linger. Get the last word. Stay on top. These responses feel like strength, but they're usually just shields. Pausing doesn't make you weaker. It makes you deliberate. The pause is not passive. It's where you decide. You're not ignoring your feelings. You're acknowledging them and choosing what to do with them. Let's say you're scrolling through messages and you see something passive-aggressive. It's subtle, but it gets under your skin. Your first instinct is to write back something sharp. You want them to know you caught it. You want to signal you're not the one to mess with. But 5 seconds gives you another route. You can sit with the feeling. You can decide whether it needs a response or if it's bait. Often, reactive energy keeps the loop going. You reply, they reply, tension builds. Everyone feels justified. No one feels better. If you pause, you might decide to address it calmly or not at all. Either way, you stay grounded. This applies to internal reactions too. You're working on something and hit a wall, a mistake, a setback, something breaks. You feel the frustration rise. You want to slam the laptop shut, say, I'm done. Walk away. That's a reactive loop. Emotion meets obstacle leads to shutdown. But again, 5 seconds can shift it. Take a breath. Feel the frustration without following it. Ask yourself, what just happened? What do I need right now? Maybe it's a short break. Maybe it's switching tasks. Maybe it's asking for help. The pause doesn't fix everything, but it gives you space to respond with intention instead of impulse. In relationships, delay is often the most generous thing you can offer. You're having a hard day. Your partner says something that lands wrong. They didn't mean harm, but your nerves are already frayed. You feel the urge to say something cutting, something that wins the moment. But winning the moment can cost the connection. If you pause, even briefly, you can feel the heat pass. You can choose to stay in the room, stay in the conversation, stay connected. That doesn't mean you don't speak up. It means you speak from a place that's grounded, not raw. 5 seconds is short. It's one breath, maybe two. But in that space, a lot can happen. The body starts to calm, the mind catches up, the emotion softens. You remember the bigger picture. You remember what matters more than being right. You remember the last time you reacted and regretted it. You give yourself a chance to do it differently. Sometimes you need more than 5 seconds. That's fine. Take a walk, step away, say, let me think about this. Say, I'll get back to you. You're not avoiding the moment. You're protecting it. You're making sure you don't break something you care about with a sentence you didn't mean. You can't take back a reactive message. You can always send a thoughtful one later. This doesn't mean you stay silent when things matter. It means you speak with clarity instead of heat. You can still be direct. You can still set boundaries. You can still say, that didn't sit right with me. You just say it from a place of calm. That kind of message lands better. People hear it, they respond to it. It doesn't trigger their defenses. It invites resolution instead of escalation. You can train this. It starts by noticing. The next time you feel the spark, anger, frustration, defensiveness, catch it. Don't follow it yet. Name it, feel it. Wait 5 seconds. Maybe count it out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then ask, what's the best move here? Not the most satisfying in the moment. The best. The one that serves the long game. It's a small rule, but it holds a lot. 5 seconds doesn't seem like much, but it's enough space for a different outcome. You don't erase the feeling. You don't pretend you're not upset. You just hold the moment long enough to choose your next move. That's where the power is. Not in the reaction, in the choice. You're stuck in traffic, late for a meeting. You feel your grip tighten on the wheel. Your heart beats faster. You keep checking the time, hoping the cars will move. You think about how this will make you look. You rehearse what to say when you finally arrive. It feels like a disaster. Then you ask one question. Will this matter in 5 years? The answer is no. You'll forget this moment by the end of the week. That simple question resets your perspective. It pulls you out of the spiral. It reminds you that not everything loud is important. The brain is wired for threat detection. It spots problems fast. It makes small things feel big. That's useful in danger, but less useful in everyday life. Your coworker's tone, your partner's comment, the email you haven't answered. These things can eat at you, even if they're small. Asking if they'll matter in 5 years gives you a way to sort them. Most won't. You're not ignoring them. You're putting them in context. Think about a mistake at work. You forgot to send a file. You said the wrong thing in a meeting. It stings. You replay it in your head, but zoom out. 5 years from now, will that moment define you? Probably not. People forget. You move on. You learn. What feels huge today is usually just one line in a much longer story. This doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you care in proportion. There's a difference between urgency and importance. Spilling coffee on your shirt before a big presentation feels urgent, but it's not important. It won't shape your future. Your ability to stay calm and think clearly, that's more important. The 5-year question helps you see that. It shifts your focus from reaction to intention. Picture yourself at a family dinner. Someone makes a comment that annoys you. You feel tempted to fire back, but you pause. You ask, will this matter in 5 years? If not, maybe you let it slide. You decide it's not worth creating distance over something small. Or maybe it does matter. Maybe the pattern runs deeper. Now you're not reacting to the comment, you're responding to the real issue. Either way, you've shifted from impulse to clarity. This question helps with decisions too. Say you're offered a project that pays well but drains your energy. You're torn. You don't want to say no to the money, but you ask, will this matter in 5 years? Will the short-term gain still feel worth it later? Or will you wish you'd protected your time? The question doesn't give you the answer, but it gives you a frame. It pushes you to think beyond the moment. The same goes for arguments. You're in the middle of one. Voices rise. Each person pushes harder. You want to win. You want to be right. Then you zoom out. Will this fight matter in 5 years? Maybe it's about something real, respect, trust, communication. Then it does matter, and you keep working through it. But if it's about who said what on a tired night, maybe it doesn't. You don't have to win that one. You can step back. Stress often comes from losing perspective. You feel pressure to respond fast, to get it right, to fix everything now. But most pressure points don't survive distance. The email you dread answering won't matter in 5 years. The awkward silence in a meeting won't matter. The delay in your plans won't matter. What will matter is how you handled pressure, how you treated people, how you treated yourself. Zooming out can also help with self-judgment. You look back on a decision and cringe. You wish you'd handled something differently. That version of you made the best call they could at the time. Will that choice define you in 5 years? Probably not. But the way you treat yourself when you make mistakes, that leaves a mark. That builds the voice you carry forward. Give yourself room to grow. Most things aren't final. They're just steps. You can use the 5-year question when you feel overwhelmed. The list of tasks looks endless. You're behind on messages. You forgot someone's birthday. Everything feels like a failure. But you ask, will this matter in 5 years? Not all of it. Some of it, yes, like maintaining close relationships or doing work that aligns with your values. The rest is noise. You can let some things go. Not because they don't matter at all, but because they don't matter enough to carry that much weight. This frame also helps you see what does matter. If something will matter in 5 years, that's a signal. Investing in your health, building a strong partnership, doing work you're proud of, raising your kids with patience. Those are 5-year questions. They're not urgent, but they're important. They're quiet, so they get drowned out. But when you zoom out, they get clearer. You start choosing actions that build towards something lasting. Think about how you spend your time. You scroll, you check your phone, you chase the next notification. It feels harmless, but ask yourself, will this pattern matter in 5 years? If you do it every day, yes. You'll look back and wish you'd used more of that time for something real. A conversation, a walk, a book, a nap, something that filled you instead of numbing you. Zooming out helps you notice what routines are costing you. Even in crisis, this lens helps. Something big happens, a loss, a shift, a setback. It shakes your world. You ask, will this matter in 5 years? The answer might be yes, but the way it matters changes. The grief softens. The identity you felt you lost gets reshaped. You grow around the pain. The moment doesn't disappear, but it becomes part of you, not all of you. Zooming out doesn't erase hardship, it gives it shape. It says, this isn't the end of your story. Use the question without rushing the answer. Sometimes your first instinct is to say everything matters, but sit with it. Wait for the honest answer. Will this really shape your life in 5 years? If yes, pay attention. If not, loosen your grip. Don't waste energy on noise. Use your energy to build things that last. That's the difference between motion and meaning. One keeps you busy, the other takes you forward. You don't need a breakthrough. You need a win before lunch. Something small, something finished, something that gives you a clear signal. I moved forward today. That's the micro wins mentality. You stop waiting for a big push of motivation. You stop relying on streaks or perfect days. You shift focus to progress you can control. You stack one clear, completed action at a time. Not to impress anyone, not to fix everything, just to build momentum. Momentum moves you farther than motivation ever will. Most people wait for the right mood to start. They wait until the energy feels right. They wait for clarity. But moods shift. Energy fades. Clarity shows up after action, not before. If you learn to act without waiting, you stop depending on hope. You start building with what's in front of you. That's where micro wins come in. You do something small but complete. You send the email, you drink the water, you take the walk, you make the call. The task doesn't need to be impressive. It needs to be done. Picture a morning where nothing feels urgent, but everything feels unfinished. You drift, you open tabs, you scroll, then you pause and choose one small thing. You write a paragraph, you clean your desk, you stretch for 5 minutes. That's a win. It's not flashy, but it breaks the loop. You started your day with a closed loop, not an open one. That changes how the next hour feels. You're now a person who finishes things, not because you had the perfect plan, but because you took the next step. Micro wins don't mean you lower your standards. They mean you work with reality. Some days are long, some are messy. You'll be tired, you'll be distracted. But even on those days, you can do something. You can organize one folder. You can text a friend. You can outline an idea. These moves keep the machine warm. You don't have to restart from cold. That saves you more time than any productivity hack ever will. This mindset works across any area. Take health. You don't need to transform overnight. You need a short walk after lunch. You need a glass of water before coffee. You need a meal that doesn't come in a box. These aren't life-changing on their own, but they're signals. They say, I'm taking care of this. One good choice makes the next one easier. You stop seeing the mountain. You see the step. Apply it to work. You feel behind. The project feels too big. You don't know where to begin. So you don't begin. But if you pick one small piece, one paragraph, one file, one call, you create a foothold. You give yourself something to stand on. That's the first win. Then you do another. By the end of the day, maybe you didn't finish the whole thing, but you made visible progress. That keeps the pressure down. It keeps you engaged. That's how projects get done. Use the same approach with relationships. You don't need grand gestures. You need a check-in text, a moment of eye contact, a thank you, a compliment. These are small signals that keep connection alive. You don't build closeness all at once. You build it through daily signs that say, I see you, I care, I'm here. Micro wins in a relationship are the small things that keep it strong when life gets loud. People often ask how to stay consistent. They want a system. They want a rule. But the best system is to keep the bar low enough to step over and high enough to feel progress. Not too easy, not too hard, just enough to feel the shift. Micro wins do that. They're actions you can take today without needing to change your whole life. They don't ask for perfection, they ask for effort. There's a psychological shift that happens when you complete something. It doesn't matter how small it is. Finished things give closure. They give you proof. Your brain sees the result and says, we're moving. That creates momentum. Unfinished things pile up. They create noise. They drain energy. The trick is to move a task from in progress to done. That creates space. Motivation is a spike. It shows up sometimes. It fades fast. Momentum is steadier. It builds. One micro win fuels the next. You don't feel like writing, but you open the doc and write a single sentence. You still don't feel like writing, but now the page isn't blank. So you write one more, then a few more. Now you're in motion. The same thing works with cleaning, exercising, working, anything. Don't wait to feel ready. Start moving and let readiness catch up. When you track micro wins, you also build trust with yourself. You prove that you'll show up, not just on your best days, on regular days. That matters. Most people don't quit because they can't handle hard work. They quit because they don't trust that the work will add up. Micro wins give you something to point to. They show that the work is adding up, even when it's not obvious yet. You don't need to count every win. You don't need a chart. Just notice. Pay attention to what moves the day forward. What helps? What gives energy? What clears space? Stack more of that. If you find that making the bed gives you a small sense of order, do that. If walking around the block clears your head, do that. These things are often framed as habits, but they're really anchors. They hold your day in place. Sometimes you'll feel like the small win doesn't matter. You'll think this is too small to count. That's the voice you ignore. That voice wants all or nothing. It wants big progress or no progress. But growth doesn't work that way. You become who you want to be through small decisions made again and again. The voice will catch up once it sees the results. Micro wins also help when you feel stuck. You're overwhelmed. You can't think straight. Start with something that takes 2 minutes. Clear the table, wash the cup, delete one file. The win isn't the action. It's the shift from stuck to moving. It's the reminder that action is always available, even when clarity isn't. This isn't about productivity. It's about momentum. It's about building a rhythm that supports you, not drains you. When things feel chaotic, micro wins create structure. When things feel flat, micro wins create energy. When things feel impossible, micro wins prove that something is still possible. Every day won't be full of breakthroughs. Most days won't. But every day can include a few small, intentional wins. Stack those. Build your momentum there. Let motivation come and go. Let the wins carry you forward. Someone interrupts you mid-sentence. Your first thought might be, they don't respect me. Someone doesn't text back. You wonder if they're ignoring you. A coworker makes a decision without checking with you. You assume they're trying to take control. These reactions happen fast. They feel automatic. But most of the time, they're wrong. Not because the behavior didn't happen, but because the intent behind it wasn't what you guessed. That's where assuming positive intent changes everything. It gives you a different frame. Instead of they're against me, you start with maybe they just didn't realize. That small shift lowers tension and keeps you connected. Assuming positive intent doesn't mean excusing bad behavior. It doesn't mean letting people walk all over you. It means not jumping to the worst possible explanation first. Most people don't wake up planning to be rude or difficult. They're tired. They're distracted. They're dealing with something else. They're doing their best, just like you are. When you start from that place, you handle things better. You stay curious instead of defensive. You ask instead of accuse. Think about a coworker who gives you short replies in a meeting. You feel dismissed. Your instinct says they don't take you seriously. But if you pause and assume positive intent, you open other possibilities. Maybe they're trying to stay on time. Maybe they thought they were being clear. Maybe they're having a hard day and didn't mean anything by it. You can still bring it up, but you'll do it without adding fuel. You might say, I noticed you cut in a few times. I wasn't sure if we were rushing or if you had a concern. That's different than, why are you always cutting me off? One invites a conversation, the other starts a fight. This approach helps in close relationships too. You're at home. Your partner forgets to do something you asked. You feel slighted. But instead of assuming they don't care, you ask if they had a lot on their mind. You assume they meant well but missed it. That doesn't mean you don't bring it up. You still say how it affected you. But you don't lead with accusation. You give them room to explain before deciding why they did what they did. This idea also protects you from unnecessary stress. When you take things personally by default, you carry extra weight. Every interaction becomes a test. Every pause becomes a slight. Every mistake becomes a threat. That kind of mindset is exhausting. But if you assume people are trying, even if they fall short, you feel less attacked. You move through the day with less friction. You don't make everything about you. That gives you energy back. In group settings, assuming positive intent can hold teams together. One person misses a deadline, another doesn't reply to a group message. You can choose to see these as signs of laziness or disrespect. Or you can say, something might have come up. You follow up, you clarify, you check in. That keeps things working. It keeps trust alive. Once you start doubting everyone's motives, the whole thing starts to break down. This way of thinking takes practice, especially if you've been hurt before, especially if you're used to guarding yourself. But you're not giving people a free pass. You're just waiting to confirm intent before you react to it. That's a measured adult move. It says you're stable enough to not need drama to feel powerful. It says you're steady enough to stay in the room even when things feel unclear. Sometimes you'll assume positive intent and still be wrong. The person meant to hurt. The tone was intentional. The move was calculated. That happens. But even then, your response stays clean. You didn't add noise. You didn't jump. You waited, asked, clarified. That gives you the moral high ground, sure. But more than that, it gives you peace. You stayed in control of yourself. You didn't get pulled into someone else's storm. You can try this with small things first. Someone bumps into you. Someone takes your spot in line. Someone sounds short on the phone. Assume they didn't mean it. Let it pass. Notice how much calmer you feel. Then try it with bigger things. A disagreement, a dropped responsibility, a crossed wire. See what happens when you say, I'm going to believe they didn't mean harm until I know otherwise. You'll notice fewer conflicts. You'll keep more relationships steady. You'll create space for honesty without fear. You can still set boundaries. You can still say no. You can still ask for change. But you do it from a place of clarity, not suspicion. You make fewer accusations. You ask more questions. You don't let one frustrating moment define the whole relationship. You give people the same benefit you'd want, the chance to explain, the chance to be seen in full. That's what assuming positive intent really is. It's giving people a little space to be human. It makes things easier. It makes things smoother. And more often than not, it gets you closer to the truth. You hit a wall. The plan isn't working. Progress feels slow. You're tired. You're doubting yourself. The voice in your head starts talking. It says, "This isn't worth it. Let's stop." In that moment, most people try to push through with motivation. They tell themselves things like, "You've got this," or "Don't give up now." But motivation fades fast. It doesn't always hold up under pressure. What often works better is flipping the lens. Visualize the opposite. Before quitting, imagine what regret will feel like later. Picture that version of yourself, not the one who gets the win, but the one who stopped short, the one who looks back and wonders, what if I had kept going just a little longer? Regret has weight, it lingers. You don't always remember how hard something felt in the moment, but you remember the moment you walked away. You remember knowing you had more in the tank and still choosing to stop. That's a different kind of pain. It doesn't sting like failure. It nags, it loops, it follows you longer than most setbacks do. When you picture that feeling clearly, it can hold you steady when everything else shakes. Think about a time you gave up early. You had a goal, maybe a class, a project, a habit. You were in it for a while, then dropped it. At the time, it made sense. You felt overwhelmed. Life got in the way. You told yourself you'd try again later. But looking back, it feels different. Now you wonder how far you could have gone if you had just pushed through that dip. That's the moment to remember the next time you want to quit. Use it. Visualize it. Let it talk louder than the voice that says, "Stop." Say you're halfway through a run. You're tired. Your legs are heavy. You want to turn around early. In that moment, don't picture the finish line. Picture sitting on the couch later, knowing you cut the route short. Picture the small, hollow feeling of knowing you backed off. Not because you had to, but because you didn't want to keep pushing. That version of the story hurts more than a few extra steps do. That feeling is often more powerful than a pep talk. The same idea works with writing. You open the file, you try to draft a paragraph. It's not flowing. The cursor blinks, the words don't land. You want to close the laptop and say, "I'll try again tomorrow." Instead, pause. Visualize the opposite. Picture the evening. Picture going to bed knowing the page stayed blank again. Picture the guilt, the quiet disappointment. That feeling sits with you. Let that image carry weight. Often, it's enough to push out a sentence, then another. And that's all you needed, to keep going just long enough for momentum to come back. Visualizing the opposite doesn't mean catastrophizing. You're not imagining your whole life falling apart. You're just being honest about what future you will likely feel. That's useful. That's grounding. It's a way to make decisions that your future self will thank you for. Instead of making the easy call now, you take the 5-second delay to look ahead. That perspective doesn't always make the task easier, but it makes the choice clearer. This applies to conversations too. You need to say something hard, set a boundary, ask for clarity, say no. But you hesitate. You think about backing off. It would be easier not to bring it up, less risk, less friction. But then you imagine the alternative. You picture how you'll feel if you stay silent, if you walk away and carry the tension. That version of regret is heavier than the awkward moment you're avoiding. That version has no resolution. Visualize that. Let it push you toward honesty. Sometimes people quit not because the goal is too far, but because they forget why it matters. They lose sight of the bigger picture. Visualizing the opposite pulls you back into it. It reminds you what's at stake. Not just the win, but the peace that comes from knowing you stayed in the fight. Even if the result is still uncertain, even if you're tired, that version of you, the one who stayed, is the one you'll respect more. You can use this on big decisions too. Say you're thinking about quitting a job or dropping a commitment. Maybe it's the right call. But before you decide, zoom forward. Picture your life 6 months from now. Will you feel relief? Or will you wonder what might have happened if you had stuck it out a little longer? That's not always easy to answer. But asking it forces you to slow down. It pulls you out of the moment and into a wider frame. Not every hard thing is worth continuing. Some paths really do need to end. Some battles aren't yours to fight. But most of the time, quitting happens too early. Right before the turn. right before the skill clicks, right before the thing starts to feel easier. The dip feels permanent. The discomfort feels personal. But if you zoom out and picture what stopping will feel like later, you might hold on a little longer, and that might be long enough. This way of thinking works well with habits. You're trying to stay consistent, eat better, sleep earlier, stay off your phone. But the pull to break the streak is strong. One night off won't ruin everything. One skipped session doesn't feel like a big deal. But zoom forward, picture the slope. One slip becomes two. The pattern fades. You look back and wonder why you stopped. That regret isn't loud at first, but it grows, it builds. Use that image now, while you can still keep the streak alive. That's where the power is. Not in willpower, in foresight. You can build this into your day. Set up a short pause before bailing on something. Ask, if I stop here, how will that feel tonight? Tomorrow? Next month? Try not to answer in your head. Picture it, feel it, sit with it. That version of you is real. They'll live with the choice. Make the call that helps them stand taller. You don't need fear to fuel you. You need clarity. And visualizing regret gives you that. It cuts through the noise. It stops you from acting on mood. It brings you back to what matters. Not the comfort of now, but the peace of later. That kind of peace comes from effort, from staying in the hard part, from doing what present you wants to avoid, because future you will be glad you did. Regret is a stronger teacher than motivation. It remembers, it points out the gaps, but it can also be a compass, a tool. Something you look at before it's too late, use it, picture it clearly, then decide. Your mind is like a browser. Every task, worry, or half-finished idea opens another tab. You think about an email while folding laundry. You plan dinner while on a Zoom call. You try to focus on writing, but your brain is still replaying a conversation from this morning. You're not getting more done. You're just scattered. This is what multitasking feels like. It's not productive. It's noisy. The one-tab rule flips that. One mental tab open at a time. One clear task. Everything else waits its turn. Multitasking sounds efficient, but it splits attention. You switch between tasks without noticing. Each switch costs time and focus. Your brain resets every time you shift. That reset burns energy. It drains your ability to think clearly. You might think you're doing 3 things at once. You're not. You're doing one thing badly, pausing and doing another thing badly, then wondering why everything feels half-finished. One-tab thinking is about restraint. It says, right now, I'm doing this. Everything else can wait. It doesn't mean you ignore the rest. It means you choose where your mind is pointed. You handle tasks one at a time instead of carrying them all at once. That creates space. Space lets you work better, think deeper, and feel calmer. Say you're writing an email. Seems simple. But halfway through, you remember you need to schedule a call. So you open your calendar. Then you see a reminder to order groceries. You switch tabs again. You didn't finish the email. You didn't book the call. You didn't place the order. Now your brain is juggling 3 threads, and none are complete. One-tab thinking says, close the other tabs, write the email, hit send, then move to the calendar, then move to groceries. 3 tasks fully done instead of 3 tabs left open. Mental tabs aren't always about tasks. They're sometimes emotions. You're trying to work, but you're also annoyed about a text you haven't answered, or anxious about a conversation later tonight, or distracted by something someone said yesterday. These things take up space. You can't close every emotion instantly, but you can name them and set them aside. Write the thought down. Tell yourself, I'll come back to that later. Then bring your attention back to what's in front of you. You'll feel resistance. Your brain wants to keep all the tabs open, just in case. It feels safer to carry everything, but that's how mental load builds up. You end up tired without knowing why. You think you need more rest or more time. Often, you need less noise. One-tab thinking reduces the noise. It gives you a single focus point. That's easier to manage than juggling the whole day at once. This is why deep work is hard. It's not that the work is too complex. It's that you don't give it a clear stage. You sit down to think or write or solve something. But your phone is nearby. Your inbox is open. You remember a task you forgot. Each one pulls your attention just a little. You tell yourself it's harmless. But those pulls add up. They break your focus before it even settles. Try doing one thing at a time and notice how quickly other thoughts pop up. You'll see how often your brain tries to leave the task. That's not failure. That's just a sign of habit. You've trained your mind to jump. Now you're retraining it to stay. When the jumpy thoughts show up, you don't follow them. You say, "Not yet." You write them down if needed. Then you bring your attention back. You can practice this with anything: washing dishes, writing a report, talking to someone. Stay with the task. Notice when your brain drifts. Gently bring it back. Like a muscle, focus builds over time. You don't need to force it. You just need to notice when it breaks and reset. This rule also helps when you feel overwhelmed. You look at your list and panic. Too much, not enough time. The mental tabs explode. But you don't need to do everything now. You need to do the next thing now. Just one email, one decision, one chore. When it's done, you close that tab. You move to the next. Suddenly the list shrinks. Not because the tasks disappeared, but because your mind isn't holding all of them at once. Start your day with a short plan. What's the one thing that matters most right now? Do that first. Everything else waits. If it takes longer than expected, that's fine. You're still making progress. You're not wasting energy jumping between 10 half-finished thoughts. That's where momentum lives, in full attention, not scattered action. Apply this to conversations. You're talking to someone, but your mind is on work, or your phone, or what you're going to say next. That's multitasking. It's why people feel unheard. One-tab thinking says, "Right now I'm here." You listen fully, you respond fully. That kind of presence shows up. It builds trust. It keeps things from spiraling. This matters even more when emotions run high. Someone says something upsetting. Your brain opens 10 tabs at once: anger, defense, judgment, memory, strategy. You want to reply fast. You want to be right. But if you pause and close the extra tabs, you might find space for the truth. What did they actually say? What do I want from this conversation? What matters most here? One clear question, one clear answer. That's better than 10 fast reactions. The one-tab rule is simple, but not easy. The world pulls at your attention. Devices, notifications, worries. You won't always get it right, but even 10 minutes of single-tab thinking can change your day. One focused task in the morning can make the rest feel lighter. One clear decision can settle 5 lingering doubts. You don't need to escape the world. You just need to manage how much of it enters your mind at once. You can still do many things in a day, just not all at once in your head. One tab, one focus, one thing at a time. That's where clarity lives. That's where progress starts. You wake up with a jumble in your head before your feet even hit the floor. The day feels heavy, as if a storm brews inside your mind. In these moments, asking a simple question can clear the clutter. What's dominating my mind right now? This inquiry forces you to step back from the chaos and take stock of your inner state. It calls on you to see the thoughts, worries, or emotions that take up the most room in your head. When you ask yourself this, you slow down and allow awareness to guide you. That awareness brings control. It frees you from reacting on impulse and gives you room to choose. Imagine you are sitting in traffic on a busy morning. You feel the familiar pull of irritation as you watch cars inch forward. Alongside that frustration, a tension grows in your chest. Your mind races with thoughts of being late, the meeting that awaits you, and the critic inside that judges every delay. In that moment, the question comes to you: what's dominating my mind right now? You recognize that it is the fear of judgment that weighs on you more than the delay itself. By naming it, you take back a small piece of the morning. You then choose to focus on steady breathing instead of the anger that rises. This small act of awareness shifts your day from reactive to intentional. Consider another scene. You are in a long conversation with a friend. The words flow, and sometimes they slow to a pause. Suddenly, your mind slips away to worry about an unresolved email or a mistake you made yesterday. That lingering thought becomes the dominant one. At that moment, you can ask, what's dominating my mind right now? When you do, you see that a regret from the past lurks over the conversation. Recognizing that regret allows you to acknowledge it without letting it steer your feelings in the present. You return your focus to your friend, and the dialogue flows more freely. This act prevents old concerns from coloring new interactions and shows the value of awareness. At work, the pressure to perform often leads to mental clutter. You might start a task while your mind is split between deadlines, upcoming meetings, and the instant buzz of notifications. In the middle of preparing a report, you find your focus scattered. Questions and to-do lists swarm your thoughts. In that crucial moment, you ask, what's dominating my mind right now? You may discover that your mind is crowded with fear of not being good enough or with worries about an unresolved issue. Identifying these thoughts takes away some of their power. You then make a conscious decision. You set aside those worries for a scheduled time later. For the moment, you give your full attention to the report. By doing so, you regain control of your mental energy and create space for focused work. This practice does not require you to solve all your problems immediately. It simply invites you to see them with clear eyes. In the quiet that follows the question, you might observe how various thoughts compete for attention. Some thoughts take the form of distractions, like a minor mistake from yesterday or what others might think of your current project. Other thoughts show up as deeper emotions such as worry, fear, or even excitement about something new. Recognizing these aspects of your mental landscape allows you to sort them. You can let the lighter ones pass and note the heavier ones for later. This is not about judging the thoughts, but about witnessing them. That witnessing creates distance from the impulse to react without pause. A simple routine can help solidify this habit. As you move through your day, build in mini checks. When a strong emotion arises, be it anger at a harsh comment, sadness over a setback, or anxiety about an upcoming event, pause and ask, what's dominating my mind right now? If you are on a walk while waiting for a meeting to start, or even when you are brushing your teeth, let that question come to the forefront. At first, the answer might be obvious. Later, you might uncover layers. Perhaps you notice that beneath the nervousness lies the worry that you are not prepared, or the irritation masks a deeper sense of hurt. By tagging the dominant thought, you transform it from an unconscious driver into a known factor you can manage. In this way, awareness becomes the tool that helps you reclaim control over your reactions. This process also influences how you deal with setbacks. Say you experience a minor failure like burning dinner or getting a phone call with bad news. The natural impulse is to let frustration or self-criticism take hold. Instead, you ask yourself, what's dominating my mind right now? In that moment, you catch the self-judgment before it can spiral into a more powerful emotion. Recognizing that judgment in real time allows you to adjust your thoughts. You might tell yourself that mistakes are part of learning and that you now have a guide to improve next time. The act of identifying your dominant thought moves you from a state of mere reaction into one of reflection. It shifts your energy from being stuck in a moment of regret to planning what you can do differently. At times, the answer might be discomfort or even fear. Perhaps you are facing a situation that you have been avoiding, a difficult conversation, a looming deadline, or a personal challenge. When fear rules the day, the question reveals that fear clearly. Once you name it, you find that fear is not a permanent barrier, but a signal. It tells you that there is something important here that needs attention. With fear acknowledged, you can choose to work through it in small steps. You can plan for the confrontation or prepare better for the challenge ahead. Awareness through the question brings a quiet strength, one that arises from knowing your own state. This strength is the steady hand that guides you through tough moments. This habit also works well in the realm of creativity. Artists, writers, and makers often have periods when their minds are full of competing ideas. You might feel a mix of excitement and doubt while trying to create something new. At such moments, asking, what's dominating my mind right now, helps filter out the noise. You might discover that the doubt is louder than the creative impulse. Once you see it, you can set it aside and let the genuine creative energy surface. That clear focus then allows your ideas to form more smoothly. The question then acts as both a mirror and a guide for what truly drives you. It helps you keep the work moving in the direction that feels most authentic. Even in moments of leisure, a mental spot check offers value. When you relax, the mind can drift into old habits of worry or replay past conversations that keep you from enjoying the present. By questioning what dominates your mind, you shift from being a passive passenger to an active observer. You steer the thoughts away from what weighs you down and toward what brings you joy. That shift has a quiet impact over time. It reinforces that control comes from being aware, not from letting every thought decide your mood. In this way, each spot check builds a habit of self-care and clarity. Eventually, this practice becomes second nature. You start to notice the subtle shifts that arise when you check in with yourself. It becomes a mental reset button you can use anywhere, at any time. This simple question, repeated throughout the day, clears away the clutter. It shows you the thought that has the most grip on your attention. And once you see it, you decide whether to engage with it, let it pass, or set it aside for later reflection. Over days and weeks, that practice builds a steady inner calm. You learn that you can choose your focus. You learn that the mind does not have to control you. The impact of this practice resonates throughout your life. In conversations, you speak with the clarity that comes from knowing your internal state. In your work, you dedicate energy to what truly matters instead of being pulled away by every distraction. In your creative endeavors, you let the right ideas flow without being blocked by doubt. And in your quiet moments, you find a stillness that nourishes you. Asking, "What's dominating my mind right now?" creates a space where you can find your center, even when the world around you spins fast. Awareness grants you a measure of control that none of the external pressures can take away. It becomes the foundation on which you build each day, slowly layering resilience, clarity, and a calm kind of strength. A thought shows up in your head. It says you're behind. It says you're not doing enough. It says you'll never get where you want to go. It sounds convincing. It shows up with a familiar voice, your own. That makes it feel true. But the truth is, not every thought deserves your trust. Not every thought is a fact. Most are passing interpretations built from mood, memory, or fear. If you treat every thought like a command, you'll be pulled in 100 directions. If you treat them like clouds, passing, shifting, temporary, you stay grounded. You can't stop thoughts from coming. They show up on their own. Some are useful, some are junk. Some are patterns you picked up years ago that no longer fit who you are. The mistake is not having those thoughts. The mistake is believing every one of them. If a stranger said half the things your mind tells you, you'd walk away. But because the words happen inside your head, you assume they must be worth listening to. Say you're walking into a new situation, a job interview, a meeting, a first date. A thought says, "You're going to mess this up." It feels like a warning. It wants to protect you. But if you take it at face value, you'll tense up, you'll shrink, you'll act like the mistake is already happening. But if you step back and say, "That's just a thought," you get some space. You see it, name it, and decide whether to believe it. Most of the time, it doesn't hold up under light. Some thoughts are leftovers, something someone told you years ago, something that got repeated enough times that it started to stick. Maybe a teacher said you weren't trying hard enough. Maybe someone close to you made a sharp comment about your ability, your body, your worth. Those words leave tracks. Your mind stores them and brings them up again, especially when you're tired or stretched thin. But you're not the same person you were then, and those voices weren't always right to begin with. The mind tends to repeat what's familiar, not what's true. If you've thought something for a long time, "I'm not good with people, I always mess this up, I don't deserve a break," you'll hear it often. But repetition is not evidence. It's just frequency. It doesn't make the thought more accurate, it just makes it louder. You can practice spotting this when something small goes wrong. You spill coffee, you miss a detail, you forget to reply. A thought comes fast, "I'm so careless." You can grab it, believe it, and let it shape your day. Or you can say, "There's that voice again." You observe it like you'd observe a cloud drifting by. You don't need to chase it. You don't need to push it away. You just let it pass. That's the skill, seeing without swallowing. This approach works even when the thought feels intense. You might think, "Nobody cares what I have to say." That doesn't mean it's true. That doesn't mean people don't care. That just means you're in a low moment. Maybe you feel overlooked or unheard. The thought reflects the feeling, not the facts. Feelings deserve attention, but the thoughts they generate aren't always the best guides. You can say, "I feel disconnected," without turning that into, "I am unimportant." The first is real. The second is a judgment, a jump, one you don't have to make. Not trusting every thought doesn't mean ignoring all of them. Some are useful. Some tell you where something's off. A worry might point to a real problem. A doubt might show where you need to prepare more. But the key is to test them. Put them under a light. Ask, is this thought helpful? Is it true? Would I say it to someone I care about? If the answer is no, you don't need to follow it. This matters most in quiet moments. When you're alone, scrolling your phone, lying in bed, taking a walk, that's when the mind gets loud. It brings up fears. It replays things. It builds stories. If you don't pause and check in, you start to believe those stories. You forget that your thoughts reflect your state, not your worth. When you're hungry, tired, lonely, or anxious, the thoughts shift. The world looks darker. But that's not the world. It's your lens. You can also watch this happen in conflict. Someone says something sharp. You feel hurt. A thought comes, they don't respect me. If you believe it instantly, you react. You fire back, you shut down. But if you hold it lightly and say, that's one possible story, you leave room to ask. Maybe they were rushed. Maybe they misunderstood. Maybe they were reacting to their own thoughts. You get options instead of just reactions. This is a skill you build slowly. It starts with noticing. You catch a thought and say, there it is. You don't need to fix it right away. You just need to recognize that it's a thought, not a law. You might even write them down. Read them later. See how many of them were exaggerated, vague, or clearly false. That gap between the thought and the truth, that's your power. That's where change lives. You can apply this in conversations with yourself. You miss a goal. A thought says, I'll never figure this out. You say back, that's frustration talking. You forget something. A thought says, I'm a mess. You say, no, I'm human. You feel fear before a big step. A thought says, I'm not ready. You say fear is normal before growth. You're not arguing with the thoughts. You're not feeding them either. You're standing one step back and choosing your response. Some people think this means ignoring reality. It doesn't. You still look at what's working and what's not. You still take feedback. You still reflect. But you do it from a place of clarity, not chaos. You take charge of the thoughts instead of letting them take charge of you. Eventually, you start to see the patterns. You notice that certain thoughts show up in certain moods. You realize that doubt always shows up right before you stretch. That judgment shows up when you're tired. That comparison creeps in when you feel uncertain. Once you see the pattern, you don't take the thought so seriously. You say, that again, and keep going. You'll never stop thinking. But you don't have to believe every word your mind offers. Some thoughts are helpful guides. Some are background noise. Some are just echoes. Your job isn't to silence them all. Your job is to listen with care, sort what's useful, and let the rest move along. Like clouds, not commands, not facts, just weather. Something goes wrong. A plan falls apart. You lose something you care about. You get passed over. You feel stuck. Your first instinct is to ask, why me? It comes quickly, without effort. It sounds like a question, but it's not really looking for an answer. It's a reaction. It carries frustration, pain, sometimes bitterness. It doesn't move you forward. It loops. It repeats. It makes you feel like a victim of your own life. But there's another question that gives you a foothold. What can I learn from this? That one shifts your posture. That one makes you a participant, not just an observer. Why me? Asks for fairness. It wants life to follow your script. But life doesn't do that. It doesn't follow a clean pattern. Things happen that you didn't ask for. Things happen that don't feel fair. That's real. But the question, what can I learn, doesn't need fairness to work. It doesn't need blame. It works with whatever's in front of you. Take a simple example. You study hard for something, a test, a presentation, a pitch. You give it everything you've got. Then it falls flat. You don't get the result you expected. Why me shows up fast. You start listing reasons you didn't deserve this outcome. You compare yourself to others who seem to coast through. You question your worth. But if you catch yourself and ask instead, what can I learn from this? Something shifts. Now you're scanning for signal. Maybe your prep was off. Maybe you missed something in the delivery. Maybe you need feedback. Or maybe it wasn't about you at all. And the lesson is to not tie your self-worth to single outcomes. The better question doesn't erase the disappointment, but it gives it shape. It turns a vague sense of failure into something you can work with. That's how people grow. not by avoiding pain, but by looking into it with a clear eye and asking what it has to teach. This shows up in relationships too. Someone pulls away, someone doesn't respond the way you hoped. Why me shows up again. It paints you as the rejected one, the one who tried but still ended up alone. But again, the question leads nowhere. It's open-ended in the worst way. It invites you to assume, and usually the assumptions aren't kind. But what can I learn? Opens something up. Maybe you see where you ignored early signs. Maybe you learn you weren't being as honest with yourself as you thought. Or maybe you did nothing wrong, and the lesson is that people can change course and you don't always get a say in that. That's not comfortable, but it's real. And once you see it clearly, you don't carry as much confusion around. Even in small moments, the kind you'd usually shake off, this shift helps. You get cut off in traffic, you spill coffee, you mess up a small task. Why me? Is your brain's shortcut to outrage. But ask, what can I learn? And maybe you realize you're rushing again. Maybe you're distracted. Maybe you need more sleep. The question doesn't always have to lead to something profound. Sometimes it just helps you notice a pattern you can break. You can also use this shift when dealing with feedback. Say someone gives you notes on your work, and it stings. You feel misunderstood or criticized. Why me enters again. Why are they picking me apart? Why can't they just see what I meant? But then you take a breath and ask, what can I learn from this? Even if the delivery wasn't perfect, there might be something useful inside the comment. A missed point, a tone issue, a gap in clarity. You don't have to agree with everything, but by asking a better question, you stay open instead of defensive. That openness is where better work comes from. There's also the question of timing. You don't always have to ask the better question right away. Some pain needs space before it can teach. But when you're ready, when the sting softens, you come back and ask, what did this teach me? Not in a way that blames you, in a way that strengthens you. Because learning doesn't mean self-blame, it means self-honesty. It means saying, this happened. I didn't choose it, but I get to choose what comes next. This also applies when you're in the middle of something hard, not just looking back. When the path ahead is uncertain, when you're facing repeated friction, you can still ask better questions. Instead of, why is this so difficult? You ask, what is this asking from me? You're not asking life to justify itself. You're asking how to meet it. That's a more useful frame. That's where growth begins. The difference in questions also shows up in how you talk to others. Someone vents. Someone tells you about a setback or a failure. You could nod and say, that sucks. Why do these things always happen to you? That keeps the story stuck. Or you could say, what do you think this might be showing you? That shifts the focus. It doesn't erase empathy. It deepens it. You're not just agreeing with their pain, you're helping them move through it. You don't need perfect answers. The goal isn't to solve everything. The goal is to train your mind to ask questions that invite clarity. Over time, that becomes habit. You catch yourself mid-rant, you pause and ask a better question, and slowly your inner voice changes. It becomes less about blame and more about curiosity. Less about being stuck and more about moving forward. There are times when why me is honest. Times when pain is sharp and fresh and deserves a place. You don't need to bypass that, but stay there too long and the question becomes a cage. A better question is a key. It opens a door. It reminds you that while you can't always control what happens, you always have some say in how you respond. And often, the way you respond shapes the next chapter more than the event itself ever could. The better question doesn't erase what happened, it just makes sure it's not the end of the story. You get stuck, you stare at the screen, you reread the same line 5 times. Nothing lands, nothing flows. Or maybe you're tense, shoulders tight, jaw clenched, breath shallow. You feel the day pressing in. You try to push through with more thinking, more effort, more willpower. But you don't need more thought, you need a reset. And the fastest way to reset your mind is to move your body. Break state physically, change your posture, breathe deep, stand up, stretch, shake it out. You're not escaping the work, you're clearing the static so you can come back sharper. The brain and body are connected. That's not theory, it's everyday reality. When your body is tense, your thinking narrows. You fixate, you loop, you replay. But if you shift your physical state, your mind follows. It's immediate, it's reliable, and you don't need a routine or a gym or a schedule. You just need to do something different with your body than what you're doing right now. Start with posture. Most people sit slouched without realizing it. Shoulders forward, neck dropped. It's a position of retreat, a defensive posture. It tells your nervous system to stay small. That posture feeds the loop of stress and fatigue. You don't break that loop by trying to think positive. You break it by standing up, straightening your back, pulling your shoulders back, expanding your chest. That shift alone tells your brain you're safe, present, ready, not afraid, not hiding. Breathing is another lever. Shallow breath keeps your system in alert mode. It's how your body responds when it senses a threat, even if the threat is just a deadline or a comment from someone earlier. You can flip that signal. Inhale through your nose, deep into your belly, hold for a second. Exhale slowly through your mouth. Do it 3 or 4 times. That's enough to your mood, but your ability to focus, listen, and decide. If you've been sitting too long, move, walk, stand, stretch. Do something with your hands, roll your neck, shake your arms out. It doesn't need to be a workout, it just needs to be different. The goal isn't to burn energy. The goal is to change your internal channel. Movement shakes off the noise. It breaks the grip of thought loops. It clears the room so you can bring in something better. Think about a time when you were overwhelmed. Too many thoughts, not enough clarity. You tried to sort it out by sitting still and grinding through it, but your head stayed foggy. Then, maybe without planning it, you got up. You paced, you washed your hands, you stepped outside. A few minutes later, things looked different. Not because the problem disappeared, but because your mind had space to see it from a different angle. This isn't just about stress. It works for frustration too. You're working on something and it's not clicking. You try again, still stuck. Frustration rises. You want to walk away for the day. Instead, stand up, move, reset, come back. Often the block breaks after the shift, not during. You weren't out of ideas. You were just jammed. Physical reset clears the jam. The same principle applies when you're in a heated conversation. Your body tenses, your breath shortens, your tone changes. That's not just emotion, that's a physiological state. You can interrupt it. You don't have to keep going down that path. Pause. Take one slow breath. Roll your shoulders back. Feel your feet on the ground. That moment gives you just enough space to choose a better response. You don't need to say the perfect thing. You just need to not say the thing you'll regret. Breaking state physically also helps when you feel numb. Not angry, not anxious, just flat, like you're moving through the day in neutral. The mind goes dull, the body follows. In those moments, even small movement matters. Stand and stretch your arms overhead. Do 5 slow squats. Walk to the window and back. You're not looking for a mood boost, you're just getting things moving again. That's enough to shake off the fog. You can use this in micro moments, between tasks, between calls, before making a decision. Reset your posture, roll your neck, take a breath. That pause clears the old task from your system so it doesn't bleed into the next one. Without that reset, your day becomes one long, blurred streak. With it, you get clean transitions. You stay more alert, more present, less reactive. You don't need to make it a big deal. No timer, no routine, just awareness. Notice when you're stuck, tight, or flat. Then do something different with your body for a minute or 2. Walk outside, bounce your heels, roll your wrists. The change doesn't have to look impressive. It just has to interrupt the pattern. There's a reason athletes reset their body before big moments. Boxers bounce, sprinters shake out their legs, tennis players pace between serves. These aren't random habits. They're physical resets. They keep the mind sharp by moving the body. You don't have to be in a ring or on a field to use the same principle. Use it in your kitchen, your office, your car. You'll feel the difference. This works because your body carries your state. When you change the body, you change the message the brain receives. You send a new signal. The stress signal gets interrupted. The defensive posture gets replaced. The shallow breath deepens. These changes don't require motivation. They just require movement. The mind follows the body more often than we think. Try it next time you feel stuck. Don't analyze, don't spiral. Just stand up, move, reset. See what changes, then return to the task. The goal isn't to escape, it's to return with more clarity, more energy, more control. One small movement at the right time can clear the noise that thinking alone can't fix. You sit down to do something simple, write a message, organize files, plan your week. You tell yourself it'll take 15 minutes, but you give yourself an open window. No clear end, no pressure. What happens? It expands. The task stretches out. You reread the same sentence, you move things around without finishing them. An hour later, you're still not done. This is Parkinson's Law in action. Work expands to fill the time you give it. The fix is direct. Set internal deadlines. Don't wait for someone else to assign them. Be your own boss. Shorten the window, then act like it's real. Most people treat external deadlines with respect. When someone else expects something by Friday, they deliver. But when it's just them, no deadline, no pressure, it drags. That's not a discipline issue. It's structure. Without clear edges, your focus fades. Time becomes soft. You tell yourself you're working, but you're floating. You're busy, but not closing loops. Internal deadlines add shape. They say, I will finish this by 10:30, not, I'll work on this today. That small shift changes how you show up. Take a task that usually takes you 3 hours. If you tell yourself you have all afternoon, it will likely take all afternoon. You'll pause, check your phone, look something up, take a break. If you tell yourself you have 2 hours to get it done, you trim the waste. You make decisions faster. You skip over perfectionism. You push through the slow parts. The time pressure becomes a tool, not panic, just focus. This works especially well with tasks that don't come with deadlines built in. Things like outlining a project, responding to messages, researching, writing, editing. These can sprawl. You think, I'll get to it, and then it rolls over to tomorrow. Set a clear block. Say, I'll finish this outline in 45 minutes. Start the clock. Then treat it like a real limit. That doesn't mean you rush. It means you move with purpose. The trick is to believe your own deadline. If you treat it like a suggestion, it won't hold. You need to commit to it, like it came from someone else. The brain responds to pressure, not crushing pressure, but clear, self-imposed urgency. It snaps you out of drift. It says, this matters now. That's enough to break the spell of endless time. You can practice this with small tasks. Say you have a stack of emails to sort. Don't just open the inbox and start clicking. Say, I'll clear these in 15 minutes. Then hit start. You'll move faster. You'll stop rewriting every sentence. You'll get through more than usual. It's not about cutting corners. It's about cutting hesitation. Internal deadlines also reduce decision fatigue. When time is open-ended, you keep deciding how much to do, how long to keep going, whether to stop now or later. That burns energy. But if you've already decided, I'm working on this for 1 hour, you're free to focus. You don't question it. You just work. When the time's up, you reassess. Do you keep going? Do you move on? Either way, you're in charge, not the clock. This helps with deep work too. If you sit down to write and give yourself all day, your brain resists. It doesn't know where to start. It wants to delay. But if you say, I'll write for 90 minutes, you narrow the space. Now there's a frame. That frame holds your attention. It tells your brain, this is the window. Even if the work is hard, you know there's an end. That makes it easier to begin. You don't have to finish everything in one block, but you do need to set blocks that move things forward. Big projects need chunks. A report might take 4 sessions. A proposal might take 2. Break it up, schedule it. Treat each block like a deadline. The goal isn't speed. The goal is steady progress. Internal deadlines create that rhythm. This applies outside of work too. If you say, I'll clean the kitchen later, it stays messy. But if you say, I'll clean it in 10 minutes after lunch, it gets done. Same task, different result. The deadline gives it a container. You stop waiting for the mood to strike. You just follow the plan. You can also use internal deadlines to stop working. Without a stopping point, tasks bleed into your evening. You keep checking in, opening files, tweaking things. Set a shut-off time. Say, I'm done by 6. Then hold the line. That boundary makes your off time real. It gives your brain time to recover. It also forces you to work with more intention during the day. If you know you're stopping at 6, you won't waste the morning drifting. Some people resist this idea because it feels artificial. But all structure is artificial. You decide what matters. You decide how long it should take. The point isn't perfection. The point is accountability. You're building trust with yourself. You're proving that you can make a plan and follow through. It's fine to adjust as you go. If you set a 30-minute deadline and realize it needs 45, update it next time. The goal isn't to rush through everything. The goal is to avoid the trap of open time. Time without limits invites delay. Internal deadlines close that door. They help you move with urgency instead of pressure. This isn't about being rigid. It's about being clear. You don't need a packed schedule. You just need to know when something starts, when it ends, and what happens in between. That clarity frees up attention. It lowers stress. You stop wondering if you're doing enough. You know you're doing what you planned. Treat your time like it matters, even if no one's watching. Be the one who sets the frame. Decide how long something gets, then show up for it. Not to impress anyone, not to chase an outcome, just to build the habit of showing up when you say you will. That habit builds momentum. That momentum builds trust. The kind of trust that lasts longer than any motivation ever will. Your mind runs all day. From the minute you wake up to the moment your head hits the pillow, it's processing, scanning, deciding, reacting. And just like the body, it needs fuel. But not just any fuel. It needs something solid, something sharp, something that shapes it. That's the point of a daily mental diet. Not endless information, not noise. Just one thing a day that feeds your mind on purpose. One quote, one idea, one insight. That's enough. You don't need a long reading list. You don't need to scroll for hours. You need something simple but strong. A line that stops you, a thought that sticks, something that cuts through the day and changes how you see it. The goal isn't volume, the goal is quality. Most people take in more content than they can use. Their feed is full, but their mind is scattered. The daily mental diet is different. It's about choosing. It's about focus. Take one quote, just a sentence. Discipline equals freedom. That's not a paragraph. It's not a book. But if you sit with it, it starts to do work. You think about your morning. You think about how structure gives you room to move. You think about how self-control now leads to more control later. That's how one idea becomes a lens. You use it to see the next few hours differently. Or maybe the line is quieter. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. You remember that when you start rushing. You apply it when you're tempted to multitask. You slow down. You get more done with less effort. That insight shapes your pace. You didn't need a lecture. You needed one line that hit at the right time. You can find these pieces anywhere. A book, a podcast, a note you wrote to yourself, a conversation you overheard. The source doesn't matter. What matters is that you choose something each day. You make a habit of feeding your mind with purpose. Without that, the world will feed it for you. And most of what the world gives is noise. Headlines, outrage, distractions. None of it sticks. None of it strengthens you. Think about what happens when you skip meals. Your body doesn't crash right away, but over time, your energy dips. You feel weaker. You get irritable. Same thing happens to the mind. If you go days without feeding it something real, your clarity drops. Your focus drifts. Your judgment gets dull. You start reacting instead of thinking. That's when the wrong thoughts start to take over. The ones that say you're not doing enough, the ones that question everything when nothing's even gone wrong. But if you've been feeding your mind, you notice those thoughts. You hear them and know not to trust them, because you've already filled your head with something stronger, something chosen, something real. One good idea a day gives you that edge. It doesn't just inform you, it anchors you. This doesn't have to take much time. Maybe you read for 10 minutes in the morning. Maybe you hear a line on your walk and write it down. Maybe you revisit a note you left for yourself last week. What matters is that you choose it on purpose. That's what makes it part of your diet, not just your intake. This habit also gives you something to return to when the day gets noisy. Say you're dealing with a setback, something didn't go your way. You feel the slip into frustration. But earlier that morning, you read something that said, "Obstacles are the path." That line comes back. You don't force it. It's already there. It reminds you that the hard thing is the way forward, not the end. That shift in mindset changes how you respond. Or maybe the insight is more personal. Something like, "You don't need to be in the mood to do the work." That line carries you through the afternoon when your energy dips. It keeps you from stalling. It tells you that progress isn't about feeling inspired. It's about showing up. That's what the daily mental diet does. It gives you a tool for the moment when your willpower slips. Some people keep a notebook, others use an app. Some keep it all in their head. The system doesn't matter. What matters is that you keep track, that you know what today's idea is, that you check in with it during the day, not constantly, just enough to let it settle, let it guide. This habit also scales. Over time, those daily insights add up. You start to notice patterns. You see which ones stick, which ones change your behavior. You start building a mental library. And when life throws something hard at you, you don't start from zero. You already have reference points. You already have tested ideas that have held up. That makes you harder to shake. The best ideas aren't always the new ones. Sometimes you come back to the same line again and again. This too shall pass. Do the next right thing. You don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. You revisit them because they work, because they hold up. The mind needs reminders more than it needs novelty. It needs repetition. That's what practice looks like. This doesn't make you invincible. It doesn't block every hard day. But it gives you a baseline. It gives you something better than the default. When the world throws nonsense at you, your mind doesn't grab the first thing it hears. It goes back to what it's been fed. One good quote, one sharp insight, one idea that matters. Start small. Don't try to collect 100 quotes. Don't flood your feed with highlights. Just pick one thing today. Let that be enough. Let it sit in the background as the rest of the day moves forward. When something happens, a delay, a moment of doubt, a small win, see how the fits. That's how it becomes yours. Not when you read it, but when you live with it. A good mental diet isn't loud. It's quiet, steady, consistent. One quote, one idea, one insight, every day. That's enough to sharpen the edge. That's enough to keep you clear. That's enough to build a stronger mind. You drop the ball, you miss a deadline, you say something you didn't mean, you feel the tightness in your chest, the drop in your stomach, and right away, your mind starts talking, not kindly, not helpfully. You hear, "How could you mess that up?" Or, "Of course you failed again." If someone else said it, you'd call it cruel. But because it's your own voice, you let it pass. You take it as truth. You call it honesty. But it's not. It's habit. And you can break it. Talk to yourself like a friend. Not because you need to feel good all the time, not because you want to avoid accountability, but because it works. Kind self-talk is strength, not weakness. It keeps you steady when things slip. It brings you back when your thoughts start to spiral. It gives you a way to face mistakes without falling apart. Think about how you treat a friend when they're going through something hard. They come to you feeling overwhelmed. They're frustrated. They say they blew it. You don't pile on. You don't say, "Yeah, that sounds like something you'd do." You listen. You point out what's still in their control. You remind them that one bad moment doesn't undo everything. That tone, calm, honest, steady, that's what your inner voice needs to sound like. This doesn't mean ignoring what went wrong. Kindness isn't the same as excuse-making. You can still say you didn't prepare enough for that meeting, or you need to follow through next time. But you say it from a place of support, not shame. You say it with the intention to help, not punish. That difference changes everything. One keeps the door open, the other slams it shut. The problem with harsh self-talk is that it pretends to be helpful. It sounds like it's pushing you to do better, but it's not. It's just wearing down your ability to try again. The more you hear, "You always mess this up," the more you believe it. And when you believe it, you stop taking risks. You stop showing up. You play small. You stay safe. That doesn't help anyone. Self-talk becomes the lens you see through. If your voice is sharp and unforgiving, you look at every mistake like proof that you're falling short. If your voice is calm and grounded, you see mistakes as information. You learn faster. You bounce back quicker. You don't waste time beating yourself up. You use that time to adjust and move forward. This shows up in small moments. You forget to reply to a message. A harsh voice says, "You're so careless." A kind voice says, "You missed that one, let's fix it now." Same event, different tone. One drains you, one moves you. It shows up in big moments too. A relationship ends. A job opportunity falls through. You lose momentum on something you cared about. The harsh voice tells you that it's your fault, that you're not built for this, that you never follow through. But the kind voice tells the truth without cutting deep. It says, This hurts, but it's not the end. You're still in it, you can start again. People sometimes think that being hard on themselves makes them more accountable, that if they ease up, they'll get lazy or stop improving. But look around. The people who show up consistently, who keep trying, who grow over time, they usually aren't fueled by self-hate. They've learned how to correct without collapsing. They've built an internal voice that's firm but fair. That's what keeps them steady. This takes practice. If you've spent years talking to yourself like a critic, kindness won't feel natural at first. It might even feel fake. But that doesn't mean it's wrong. It just means it's unfamiliar. Start small. Catch one moment. You're walking out of a meeting and your mind starts replaying what you said. Instead of joining in, interrupt it. Say, I did my best with what I had. Not as a way out, but as a way through. Or you're lying in bed thinking about everything you didn't do that day. Your mind wants to say, you wasted the day. Change it. Say, today got away from me. I'll try again tomorrow. Not because it erases what happened, but because it gives you energy to try again. Write it down if you need to. Keep a few lines somewhere visible. Short, honest reminders. You're allowed to learn. One mistake doesn't define the whole day. Progress is still progress. Not slogans. Just clear thoughts that you'd offer to someone you care about. And when things go right, when you finish the project, or show up when you didn't want to, or set a boundary, notice that too. Say, that was a good move. Say, I handled that well. Not to brag, to build. You're teaching your brain what to notice, what to remember, what to repeat. This kind of talk doesn't make you soft, it makes you resilient. When your inner voice is steady, you're not as shaken by setbacks. You don't spiral as easily. You don't lose days to self-doubt. You catch the slip, you correct it, and you move forward. That's what strength looks like. There's always a voice in your head. If you don't shape it, it'll be shaped by old stories. Teachers, parents, past failures, social pressure. But you can change it. You can replace the running commentary with something useful. Not perfect, not sugary, just clear, steady, human. So ask yourself, would I say this to a friend? If not, don't say it to yourself. Change the script. It won't feel natural right away. That's fine. Keep doing it anyway. You're not just correcting your words, you're building a better relationship with yourself. One thought at a time. You wake up on a regular morning. Nothing major is happening. You've got your routine. Maybe some light stress. Maybe a few things you wish were different. You move through the day like it's just another one. But pause for a second and look back. Contrast today with a darker time. That stretch when you couldn't sleep. That season when things kept falling apart. The time you felt alone in a room full of people. Remember how that felt. Not to dwell, just to sharpen the edges on what you have now. That's how contrast works. It shows you what's here by reminding you what used to be. You don't need to dramatize it. This isn't about romanticizing pain. It's about clarity. If you've ever been without a job, having work, even on a long day, hits different. If you've gone through a breakup, quiet moments with someone solid take on weight. If you've dealt with panic, a calm evening becomes something real. Contrast gives the present dimension. Without it, the good gets flattened. It starts to feel normal. And when things feel normal for too long, they stop feeling like anything at all. Gratitude is easier to talk about than to feel. It sounds good. Everyone knows it's useful, but forcing it rarely works. That's where contrast helps. Instead of saying, I should be grateful, you say, this is better than that. Not in a comparison way that makes you feel guilty, in a grounded way. In a way that says, I've been through worse and now I'm not there. Think about the time you had nothing figured out, no direction, no idea what to do next. You were filling time, saying yes to things you didn't care about, wondering if anything would click. Now look at today. Maybe you're still sorting things out, but you're moving. You've learned a few things. You've made some changes. That's progress. You might not celebrate it unless you remember where you started. Or picture a night when the weight didn't lift. You were in it. Everything felt heavy. You didn't know how long it would last. Even simple things felt hard. Responding to a message, getting out of bed, making a meal. Now look at today. You got through that season. You're not stuck in the same loop. You're living with more strength than you realized. It's easy to miss when you're just focused on what's next. Use contrast when you start complaining about small things. The traffic, the email, the minor mistake. Not to ignore real frustration, but to place it. Ask yourself, would I have traded for this back when I was struggling? If the answer is yes, that's information. You're not pretending everything's great. You're just being honest about how far you've come. Contrast also helps you notice what you've built. Say you once felt out of place in every room. Now you've got one or two people you can be real with. That might not sound impressive on a good day, but compared to feeling completely alone, that's something. Or maybe you once doubted you'd ever earn a stable income. Now you've got bills covered and a little left over. You might want more, and that's fine. But don't skip over what's already in place. This is especially useful when you hit a flat stretch. Life's not bad, but it's not exciting either. Days blur, you feel stuck in routine, you're not sure if anything's moving. That's when contrast works best. Go back 5 years. Go back 2. What was hard then that's easier now? What were you hoping for then that you have now, even in part? There's probably something, a habit you've kept, a boundary you set, a pattern you broke. That progress won't scream for your attention. You have to look for it. Contrast helps you see it. It works in daily moments too. You're sitting in a coffee shop, or walking down the street, or having a meal in silence. You might not feel anything big, but if you think back to a time when your nerves were shot, when food didn't taste like anything, when walking felt like a task, now that moment feels different. Not because it changed, because you did. Contrast shows that. You can use this with people too. Think about someone who's in your life now that you once wished for. A mentor, a friend, a partner, a colleague. At one point, you were trying to connect with anyone. Now you've got real conversations, real backing. That shift matters. You don't need to hold on to it with pressure. Just notice it. Let it remind you that things do shift, that not everything stays stuck. Contrast doesn't just show what's better. It shows what you've survived. You had days when you didn't think you'd make it through. You did. You had mornings when you couldn't see how things would improve. But they did, even if slowly. That evidence builds a kind of quiet strength. You don't always feel it, but it's there when things get hard again. You remember that this isn't the first time you faced something uncertain. And you remember how it felt to come out the other side. Use contrast gently. This isn't about telling yourself to stop feeling bad because others have it worse. That kind of thinking shuts people down. This is about telling yourself, I've been through worse, and now I'm here. That kind of thinking opens you up. It builds steadiness. It helps you stay clear about what matters. You don't need to do it every day. Just check in now and then. Ask yourself, what used to feel out of reach that's normal now? Or what did I once hope for that I now take for granted? You'll find something. And when you do, let that feeling land, even for just a few seconds. That's usually enough. The mind adapts fast. What felt impossible yesterday becomes routine today. That's a gift, but it's also a trap. It makes you forget how far you've come. Contrast brings you back. It doesn't ask you to be constantly grateful, just occasionally aware. Aware that today, even with its flaws, is something you once reached for. That's worth noticing. That's worth holding, even for a moment. Some days you feel flat by noon. You didn't run a marathon. You didn't do anything unusual. But your energy's gone. You're worn out, distracted, impatient. Other days you work longer and feel stronger. You stay sharp. You finish the day with something left in the tank. The difference isn't always sleep or food or how much work you did. Often it's what or who you gave your energy to. That's why you need to stop now and then and ask 2 simple questions. What drains me? And what fuels me? That's your energy audit. It gives you a clear picture of where your mental and emotional fuel is going and what you need to change. Start with people. You don't need a full inventory, just an honest look. Who leaves you feeling empty after a conversation? Who pulls you into their stress, their drama, their spiral? These aren't bad people, but they might not be good for you in large doses. Maybe it's someone who always complains. Maybe it's someone who talks but never listens. Maybe it's someone who expects more from you than you can give. Over time, those patterns wear you down. You don't notice it right away, but you carry their weight long after the talk ends. Now think about the opposite. Who leaves you a little more grounded after you speak? Who challenges you in a good way? Who makes things feel lighter, not heavier? Maybe it's someone who listens without trying to fix. Maybe it's someone who makes you laugh without effort. Maybe it's someone who doesn't say much, but you feel steady just being around them. That's fuel. You don't need hours with these people. Sometimes 5 minutes is enough. A quick check-in, a shared joke, a reminder that not everything is urgent. Next, look at your tasks. What do you do most days that eats your energy without giving anything back? The things that hang over you, even when they're small. The things that never feel done, no matter how much time you give them. Maybe it's long meetings with no point. Maybe it's switching between 5 apps to do one task. Maybe it's chasing approvals or waiting on replies. You finish these things, but you feel drained. That's not just about time management. That's an energy leak. Then there's work that feels hard but rewarding. You show up, focus, push through something difficult, and when you're done, you're tired but clear. You feel satisfied. Even if it wasn't fun, it felt like it mattered. That's a good kind of effort. It costs energy, but it gives some back. Know the difference. Not all tired is bad. Some tired means you did something real. Other tired means you spent all day reacting instead of choosing. Your environment plays a role too. Where do you work best? Where do you think best? Look around. Is your space helping you focus or pulling you out of it? Is your phone always in view? Are you working with background noise that keeps your mind just distracted enough to slow you down? Are you sitting still for too long without a break? You don't need a perfect setup. You just need to notice what makes you feel heavier and what clears your head. Energy isn't just physical, it's emotional, mental, even digital. Who are you watching? Who are you listening to? What kind of content fills your feed? If most of it leaves you anxious, angry, or behind, that's a drain. You're not being informed, you're being pulled. Do a quick scan. What pages, what voices, what topics leave you feeling smaller? Which ones make you think more clearly? It's not about tuning everything out. It's about choosing what you let in. You also need to check in with habits, not big ones, small, repeated ones. What do you do every day that either opens you up or shuts you down? Maybe it's how you start your morning. Do you roll straight into email? Or do you give yourself 5 minutes to sit and breathe? Maybe it's how you handle transitions between tasks. Do you power through without pause, or do you take a beat to reset? Those small moments shape your state. They either help you hold energy or bleed it. Sometimes the drain isn't the task itself, it's the resistance to it. You know it needs to be done, but you keep avoiding it. That creates a slow leak. You think about it while doing other things. You carry it into the next day. The fix isn't to push harder. The fix is to notice the resistance. Ask why it's there. Maybe it's not clear enough. Maybe it feels too big. Maybe it's something you don't want to do but haven't said no to yet. That clarity alone can help you stop the leak. Look at your calendar. Are you stacking meetings back to back without breathing room? Are you saying yes to every invite because you don't want to seem unavailable? That kind of overcommitting doesn't just fill your time, it wears down your focus. Try blocking 15 minutes between meetings. Try putting boundaries around your deep work. Protect your energy like you protect your time. They're not the same, but they work together. The point of an energy audit isn't to make everything efficient, it's to make it sustainable. You can't give your best if you're always running on empty. You don't need to overhaul your life. Just tweak the balance. Do less of what drains, do more of what fuels. Shift the ratios. Write it down if it helps. 2 columns, drain and fuel. List names, tasks, habits, environments. Don't overthink it, just go with what you feel. Then take one step from each side. Remove or reduce one drain. Increase one source of fuel. Do that once a week. You'll start to feel the difference. Not overnight, but over time. Energy drives everything. How you think, how you speak, how you show up. Protecting it isn't selfish, it's smart. It's how you stay clear, it's how you stay steady. Not by pushing through all the time, but by knowing where your energy goes and making sure it goes where it matters. You're stuck, not because you don't know what the next step is, but because you're hesitating, you're spinning, you're unsure. Maybe it's a difficult conversation. Maybe it's a choice between comfort and growth. Maybe it's one of those days where you just can't get started. That's when the what would do trick comes in. You pick someone you admire, a role model, a figure you respect, someone you think clearly and act well under pressure. You step into their mindset for a moment and ask, what would they do if they were in my place right now? That one question shifts your posture. It gets you out of your head and into motion. This isn't about pretending to be someone else. It's about using their clarity to find your own. The right role model isn't perfect. They're just steady, or brave, or decisive. You know what they value. You know how they'd handle the kind of problem you're facing. And when you tap into that, you bypass a lot of overthinking. You don't need to solve everything. You just need to act like someone who knows how to move forward. Say you're dealing with a setback. Something didn't land. You feel discouraged. You want to stop trying. Ask, what would my role model do right now? Would they dwell on it? Probably not. Would they blame themselves endlessly? Unlikely. They'd step back, look at what worked, adjust what didn't. Then they'd get back to it. You don't need to feel like doing that. You just need to take the first step they'd take. Or picture a decision you've been delaying. You've gone back and forth, you've weighed the options, now you're stalling. You ask, what would someone I respect decide here? Maybe it's someone you know, maybe it's someone you've read about. Doesn't matter. What matters is how clearly you can imagine their response. They'd likely choose the harder but clearer path. The one that aligns with long-term goals, not short-term comfort. That thought is usually enough to break the deadlock. This works especially well in moments of doubt. You're writing something, building something, putting your name on something. You're about to publish or speak or show your work. You start second-guessing. You wonder if it's good enough. You feel exposed. That's when you borrow a little confidence. You ask, what would they do here? They'd press send. They'd say it out loud. They wouldn't let fear make the call. You can use this in low-energy moments too. You've got a long list. You don't want to deal with any of it. You're dragging. But instead of arguing with yourself, you picture the person you admire sitting in your chair. What would they do with the next 30 minutes? They'd pick something and handle it. Not because they feel like it, because it needs doing. That thought helps you stop negotiating with yourself. You just do the next thing. The trick works better when the person you choose is specific. Don't pick a generic, better version of yourself. Pick someone real, a coach, a writer, a leader, a friend, someone who's faced hard things and kept going. You've seen how they operate. You've heard how they think. Their voice is familiar. That makes the question work faster. It gives you a real model to follow. Sometimes that person is someone you've never met. Maybe it's someone from history or a figure you read about. That works too. You've studied them. You know how they handle pressure. You've read their words or watched their interviews. You trust their judgment. That's enough. You don't need to match them. You just need to borrow a bit of their mindset when yours isn't helping. You don't have to wait for big decisions. Use this in small daily moves. You're in a meeting and tempted to stay quiet. What would they do? Probably speak clearly, even if it's uncomfortable. You're tempted to cut a corner. What would they do? Hold the line. Do it right. You're faced with a moment of tension. What would they do? Take a breath. Stay calm. Respond instead of react. Over time, you build your own internal guide. That voice you imagined starts to sound more like you. Because each time you act from that question, you're training your future self. You're becoming someone others might ask that same question about. What would they do in this moment? You become the model by practicing the mindset. It's not about copying someone's personality. You don't need to act like them in every way. You just use their principles, their discipline, their steadiness, their clarity under pressure. That's the point. It's not performance. It's alignment. You match their approach to your situation. You let their example shape your response. This also helps in emotional moments. You're hurt. You're angry. You want to respond quickly. You stop. You ask, what would they do right now? They'd pause, they'd wait, they'd write it, then delete it. They'd protect the long game. That's usually enough to stop you from saying something you'll regret. Use this trick quietly. You don't need to announce it. You don't need to explain it. Just hold the question. Ask it at the fork in the road. Use it when you want to hide, when you want to quit, when you feel small. What would they do? Let that guide you one step forward. That's often all you need. Not a plan, just the next right move. The question gives you that over and over again. You're sitting there, staring at your screen. Too many tasks, too many options, too many ways it could go wrong. Your mind runs in circles. You bounce between tabs. You think about starting, then stop. You're overwhelmed, not because the task is impossible, but because the choices feel endless. That's where binary decisions help. You take something complex and reduce it to a simple question. Yes or no, not later, not maybe, just yes or no, right now. That shift breaks the loop. It gives you something clear. And in moments of overload, clarity beats perfection every time. You don't need the whole plan when your brain is locked up. You just need the next small move. Binary choices create that. Instead of asking, how should I respond to this email? You ask, do I respond now? Yes or no? Instead of saying, what should I work on today? You say, do I open the file? Yes or no? The task might still be hard, but now you're moving, and movement cuts through noise. Overwhelm isn't just about having too much to do. It's about feeling like there's no clear entry point. You don't know where to begin, so you do nothing. Binary questions create an entry point. They give your brain one thing to process instead of 15. You don't solve the whole puzzle. You flip one switch, then another, then another. Enough switches flipped and the lights come back on. Take a pile of unread messages. You know you need to get through them, but the thought of it drains you. Don't try to sort or prioritize or plan. Just start with one. Ask, do I open this now? Yes or no? If yes, open it. Then ask, do I reply now? Yes or no? Each step is a gate. If no, move to the next. No shame, no overthinking, just forward motion. This works with decisions that stall you. You're trying to decide whether to reach out to someone, you go back and forth. You imagine all the ways it could be awkward, all the things that might go wrong, but at the core, there's a binary. Do I text them today? Yes or no? Answer it. You'll feel the tension drop, not because the situation is solved, but because you've broken the freeze. It also works with commitments. You've got something on your calendar you're avoiding, a workout, a call, a task you promised you'd do. You don't feel like it. You try to negotiate with yourself, but instead of spinning, ask, do I start now? Yes or no? You might still say no, that's fine, but now it's a decision, not a delay. That difference matters. Binary decisions aren't about dumbing things down, they're about building traction. When you're paralyzed, you don't need better options, you need fewer. You need something that cuts through the fog. Yes or no does that. It doesn't mean the answer is final. You can adjust, you can change course, but you can't adjust something you never start. Say you've got writing to do, you've been avoiding it all week. The blank page makes your chest tighten. Don't tell yourself you need to write the perfect piece. Just ask, do I write one sentence now? Yes or no? That's it. If yes, write it. Then ask again, do I keep going? Yes or no? You're building momentum, one small flip at a time. Sometimes the decision isn't action, sometimes it's rest. You're tired, you're fried, but you're still checking things, still clicking around. Ask, do I log off right now? Yes or no? Give yourself permission to answer honestly. If yes, shut it down. If no, ask again in 10 minutes. The point isn't to force anything. The point is to get out of mental limbo. This approach also helps when your mind is spinning with emotional noise. You feel anxious, you don't know why, you keep reaching for your phone, refreshing apps, checking again. You're not doing anything useful, you're avoiding discomfort. But instead of judging yourself, bring it back to binary. Do I sit still for 1 minute? Yes or no? Or do I go for a walk right now? Yes or no? One choice, one move. That's enough to start a reset. You can apply this in conversations. You're unsure whether to bring something up. It's been bothering you, but you're avoiding it. Instead of analyzing it to death, ask, do I speak up now? Yes or no? That question brings it into the present. If the answer is no, you've made a decision. If it's yes, you know what to do next. This also helps when you feel the weight of too many ideas. You've got notes everywhere, plans for projects, books to read, things you want to start, but it's all sitting in your head, untouched. Pick one. Ask, do I start this today? Yes or no? If no, fine. Move to the next. You'll find one that pulls you. That's where you start. You can even apply this to time. You're between things. You've got 20 minutes. You're tempted to waste it. Ask, do I use this time? Yes or no? That can mean stepping outside, tidying your space, stretching, sending one message. Doesn't matter, it just keeps you from slipping into dead time. The kind where you don't rest and don't work and end up more tired than before. Use this when you notice yourself looping. When you've looked at the same list 5 times without touching anything. When you feel busy but aren't actually moving. Stop and ask a yes or no question. Make it small, make it clear, then answer it. The answer doesn't have to be yes, it just has to be yours. What matters is that you chose, that you took the wheel back from indecision. Because once you're moving, you can steer. Once you've made one decision, the next one gets easier. That's the power of binary when everything feels blurred. It's a simple tool, but simple doesn't mean soft. It means sharp. One clear move is better than 10 perfect ideas left untouched. When you're overwhelmed, you don't need more input. You need an action that cuts through the noise. And yes or no is often the cleanest one you'll find. Something happens that you didn't expect. Plans fall through, a deal slips away, a conversation turns cold. The immediate reaction is to push against it, argue with it, deny it. You tell yourself it shouldn't be this way, that someone else should have done more, that it isn't fair. And maybe you're right, but that reaction keeps you stuck. It burns time and energy and gives you nothing in return. Acceptance doesn't mean you like what happened. It doesn't mean you agree with it. It means you stop wasting effort pretending it didn't. Accept first, then act, because acceptance clears the fog. Without it, you're fighting shadows. It's easy to confuse acceptance with giving up, but they're different. Resignation says, there's nothing I can do. Acceptance says, this is what I'm working with. One shuts the door, the other opens it. You can't make a good move until you see the board clearly. That's what acceptance gives you. A clean view of what's actually in front of you, not what you wish was there. Say you miss an opportunity. You prepared, showed up, and it still didn't go your way. Maybe someone else got picked. Maybe the timing didn't work. The voice in your head says, that wasn't fair, or I should have done better, or they don't get it. You replay the scene. You argue with what happened, but nothing changes. You're still stuck in the moment that already ended. You don't need to justify it, you just need to say, it happened. That one sentence changes your position. You're no longer trying to rewind time, you're looking at what's next. The same rule applies when something breaks. A project fails, a relationship ends. You didn't want it to happen, but here it is. And the more you resist it, the heavier it gets. Acceptance lightens the load. It says, this is where I am. From that point, action becomes possible. You can decide what to repair, what to rebuild, what to walk away from. You stop guessing and start moving. Acceptance doesn't kill emotion, it makes space for it. You're allowed to feel disappointed, angry, sad. You just don't let those feelings decide what's real. The facts stay the same, no matter how you feel about them. But your actions get sharper when you stop fighting the facts. That's why the timing matters. Accept first, then feel, then act. Picture someone who just got unexpected feedback. Maybe it hit hard, maybe it felt off. The instinct is to defend, to explain. But if they pause and say, okay, this is what I've been told, they create space. They don't have to agree with it, they don't have to fold. But they now have a full view of the field. Maybe the feedback reveals something useful. Maybe it shows a misunderstanding. Either way, the next step is clearer, not emotional, strategic. This also applies to everyday friction, traffic, delays, miscommunication, things that interrupt your plan. Resistance shows up fast. You want to blame the system, the person, the timing, but the delay is already happening. The miscommunication already occurred. You don't get that time back, so you accept it, you breathe. Then you ask, what now? That 1-second pause saves hours of wasted tension. It shifts you from emotional friction to clean action. Even with internal stuff, like doubt or fear or shame, the same rule holds. You feel something heavy. You want to shake it off or argue it down. But it lingers because you haven't named it. Acceptance means calling it what it is. I feel anxious. I feel stuck. I feel unsure. That naming doesn't make it worse. It makes it visible. Now you can work with it. Now you're not pretending. Now you're not reacting to the emotion, you're responding to it. This isn't just personal, it works in teams too. A deadline gets missed. A launch underdelivers. A plan needs to change. The longer people stay in denial, the more damage gets done. But once someone says, here's the reality, The team can adjust. Now they're solving instead of scrambling. Now they're acting, not avoiding. Sometimes the hardest thing to accept is that you don't have control over what just happened. You only control what happens next. That shift is humbling, but it's also freeing. You stop trying to bend the past. You start bending the future. Action without acceptance is guessing. It's reacting. But action that follows acceptance is clean. It's steady. It holds up under pressure. This isn't about slowing down. Acceptance doesn't have to take hours. Sometimes it happens in one sentence. Okay, that happened. This is the current state. That person made their choice. It doesn't take long. It just takes honesty. And the more you practice it, the faster it gets. You don't need to agree with what happened to accept it. You don't need to like the current state to move forward. You just need to stop arguing with reality. That's the line. That's the pivot. You stop saying this shouldn't be happening and start saying this is happening, what now? That small shift changes everything. Acceptance isn't passive. It's not folding your hands. It's getting your hands on the wheel. It's facing the facts and choosing to steer. Without that, you're just drifting. You're reacting to noise. You're fighting what already is. And you're doing it with the illusion that resistance itself is strength. It's not. Strength is what happens after you stop resisting. You can practice this in small ways. Something minor goes wrong, a misstep, a miscue. Instead of narrating it, accept it. That happened. No story. Then act. Fix it. Move on. Adjust. Each time you do that, the gap between setback and action gets smaller. That's how momentum builds. Not from pushing harder, but from stopping the fight that doesn't matter. You want to make better choices. Start by seeing clearly. You want clarity. Start by accepting what's true, even when it's uncomfortable, especially then. That's how you move with purpose. That's how you stop burning energy on things you can't change and start using it where it counts. Accept first, then act. Every time. You're stuck in the present. You're thinking about what's not working, what's unclear, what's late. Your focus locks on to what's missing, what you haven't done yet. And the longer you sit in that space, the harder it is to move. That's where time travel journaling helps. You shift your point of view. You stop writing from where you are. You start writing from where you're going. You speak as if you're already there, 1 year ahead, 5 years ahead, looking back. You don't make a wish. You tell a story. You speak in past tense about things that haven't happened yet. And that shift changes your posture. It sounds simple, but it's not fluff. You're not manifesting. You're not pretending. You're using language to move your mindset. Because how you describe something shapes how you act on it. When you write from your future self's point of view, you stop asking, "Can I do this?" and start answering, "This is how I did it." That answer pulls you forward. It shows you the version of yourself that already figured it out. It reminds you that the gap is about process, not permission. You sit down with a blank page, you date it 1 year from today, and you write like it's already happened. This year, I finally built the habit. I kept showing up, even on the slow days. I finished the thing I said I would finish. Not because you're lying, but because you're outlining a track record you can step into. The more clearly you write it, the more real it becomes. Not in a magic way, in a practical one. Your brain starts to fill in the blanks. You say, "I'm now in the best shape of my life." Your mind asks, "How did that happen?" You write, "I kept it simple. I moved every day, even when I didn't feel like it. I stopped negotiating with myself." Now that version of you has a method, one you can apply now. That's the point. You're not describing a fantasy. You're describing a system, one step at a time. Or say you're building something, your own business, a creative project, a side hustle. You write from a point in the future where it's working. You say, "It took time, but I found my rhythm. I focused on one clear message. I stayed consistent when it felt invisible." That's not wishful thinking. That's strategy in past tense. You're reverse engineering the road from a place where the work has already landed. This tool also helps with doubt. Everyone hits moments where they question the path. You're in the middle and the results aren't obvious yet. You think about quitting. Instead, try this. Write from the point of view of yourself 6 months from now, looking back on this exact week. You say, "That week was heavy. I wanted to stop, but I didn't. I gave it another round. I stayed in it, and that kept the momentum alive." Suddenly, you're not inside the doubt, you're outside it. You're narrating it from a steadier place. It also works in conflict. Say you're in the middle of tension with someone close to you. It's messy. You're frustrated. You don't know how to bring it up. You pause and write from a version of yourself a few months ahead. You write, "We had a hard conversation, but it cleared the air. I stayed calm. I spoke clearly. I didn't avoid it, and it helped us reset." That gives you a model, a tone, a target to move toward. You're not stuck reacting. You're planning from the other side. Time travel journaling makes things specific. That's what separates it from daydreaming. A vague future doesn't change your behavior, but a clear one gives you a map. You don't just say, "I'm happier now." You say, "I stopped spending my whole day in reactive mode. I started blocking time for real work. I stopped overcommitting to things I didn't care about." That level of detail gives you something to work with now. The voice matters too. Don't write in a soft, hopeful tone. Write directly, clearly, like it's already real, like you've been through the hard parts and come out steady. Don't soften the truth. Say what needed to happen. Say what you did differently. Say how you stayed focused when everything else pulled at you. The more grounded the voice, the more useful it becomes. You can use this tool in short bursts. One paragraph, one page. Doesn't have to be long, doesn't have to be every day. Use it when you feel stuck. Use it when you feel foggy. Use it when you need to reconnect to why you started. Each time you do, you're not just writing, you're rehearsing. You're stepping into a mindset that sees problems as part of the path, not as blocks. It also helps with patterns. You write from the future and notice what you stopped doing. I quit chasing too many goals at once. I stopped comparing myself to everyone else's timeline. I stopped wasting my best hours on things that didn't move the needle. These aren't just reflections, they're choices. You're giving yourself direction through a voice that already lived it. You're not trying to be someone else. You're not creating a version of yourself that's perfect. You're writing as the version of yourself who stayed in the process, who didn't quit, who adjusted when things didn't work, who didn't need to have all the answers to keep moving forward. That person is you, just clearer, just later. Use their voice, borrow their perspective. When you finish, don't rush to analyze it. Let it sit, read it back, notice what parts feel honest. Notice where you hesitated to say what you really want. Adjust next time. Over time, you'll see patterns. You'll find phrases that land and carry weight. You'll build a voice that sounds less like hope and more like memory. That's what time travel journaling gives you. Not just motivation, not just optimism, direction. A grounded, forward-facing posture. A way to see where you're going by hearing from the version of you who's already there. You don't have to believe it fully. You just have to write it. Then start walking in that direction, one step at a time. Something goes wrong. A plan falls apart. Someone doesn't respond the way you hoped. You get a message you didn't want. You lose something you thought you could count on. The reflex is almost always the same. You fight it. Not out loud, but in your head. You say, "This shouldn't have happened." You say, "They should have done it differently." You say, "I didn't sign up for this." And all that talk doesn't change what happened. It just makes it heavier. It adds friction. It adds noise. That's the trap. Arguing with reality feels active, but it solves nothing. You suffer less when you stop resisting what is. This doesn't mean you accept everything as good. It means you stop pretending the facts are different than they are. You stop spending time trying to rewrite something that already happened. Reality doesn't wait for you to agree with it. It just keeps moving. Your job is to meet it, not like it, not spin it, just see it. That's the starting point for clear action. Picture a project deadline that gets moved up. You had a plan, you were pacing it out. Now you've got less time. You can react in one of two ways. First, you resist. You say, "This is ridiculous. They should have told me sooner. I'm not ready." You burn an hour venting. You feel more behind. Or second, you accept it. You say, "The deadline moved. Now I need to adjust." That's not passive. That's the moment you take the wheel back. The same rule applies in relationships. Someone pulls away, stops replying, cancels plans. You keep going over it in your head. Why would they do this? Don't they know what this means? You replay it, you analyze it, you tell yourself it shouldn't be happening, but it is. The connection changed. You can either argue with that and stay stuck, or accept it and choose what to do next. Accepting doesn't mean you're okay with it. It means you stop waiting for it to be different before you move on. Even in everyday things, this principle shows up. You spill something on your shirt before a meeting, you miss a train, you forget an appointment. The first thought is always resistance. This can't be happening. But it already has. The sooner you drop that line of thinking, the sooner you can respond. Clean it up, rebook, apologize, adjust. All of that gets blocked if your mind is still trying to undo what's already real. This doesn't mean you stop caring. You still take action. You still solve problems, but you do it from a place of clarity. That's different than reacting out of denial. Think about a loss, something big, a job, a person, a health change. The longer you argue with it, the more it eats you up. You ask questions with no answers. Why now? Why me? What if? Those don't move anything forward. You can grieve without arguing. You can hurt without getting stuck in the fight. That's the power of acceptance. It doesn't erase pain. It removes the extra layer of suffering that comes from wishing it were something else. Even when you're the one who made the mistake, the same logic holds. You mess something up, say the wrong thing, drop the ball. If you spend your time saying, I shouldn't have done that, you're locked in the past. The better move is to say, I did that, now what? It doesn't soften the responsibility. It sharpens it. It makes it actionable. Arguing with reality is exhausting because it never ends. There's always something to blame, something to rewrite, something to resist. But the more you do that, the more power you hand over. You become someone who waits for conditions to be fair before taking ownership. That keeps you stuck. Life isn't built to match your expectations. It moves how it moves. Your strength is measured by how quickly you can say, this is what's real. What do I do with it? Try applying this to small annoyances. You're in a slow line. You hit traffic. You get interrupted mid-sentence. Instead of spinning up the usual commentary, say nothing. Just note the event and keep moving. No inner monologue. No dramatic story. Just what happened. That discipline builds over time, and it pays off when the stakes get higher. This mindset works in high-pressure situations too. A deal falls through. A plan fails in public. You can try to make it not your fault, or you can look at what's true and respond. The faster you stop resisting, the faster you recover. This is how leaders move, not because they don't feel frustration, but because they don't live there. They see what's real, then make the next clear move. Even with goals, this principle applies. You thought you'd be further by now. You thought something would have happened already. You feel behind. You start telling yourself that something's wrong with the timeline. But what if it's not? What if this is just how it's unfolding? You can wish for a different path, or you can walk the one you're on with both eyes open. That's the shift. That's what keeps you from losing time arguing with a map that doesn't match the road. There's a reason this principle is hard. Resistance gives a sense of control. You feel like you're doing something by mentally pushing back, but it's a trap. You're doing work that doesn't move anything forward. Let go of the part that says this shouldn't be happening. Replace it with this is happening. Then ask what now? You're not giving up when you stop resisting. You're stepping into the moment as it is, not how you pictured it, not how you wanted it, but how it's showing up. That's where your choices live, not in the version of the day you planned, but in the one that's unfolding. That's the place you act from. That's the place you find power again. So the next time you feel yourself slipping into that internal fight, pause. Ask yourself, am I arguing with what's already true? If the answer is yes, stop. Drop the fight. Pick up the facts. Then move. You don't need to like the moment. You just need to meet it. Because reality isn't the enemy. It's the starting point. Every time. Someone says something sharp. A comment that stings or digs or tries to pull you in. Maybe it's online. Maybe it's in a meeting. Maybe it's at the dinner table. The pull to respond is instant. You want to correct it, defend yourself, prove your point, but you don't have to. That's the whole play. You can stay quiet. You can let the moment pass. You can keep your power by saying nothing. Silence is not weakness. It's not retreat. It's a choice. And when used well, it's sharper than any reply. Most people feel the need to respond right away. They treat every message, every opinion, every challenge like an alarm. But not everything deserves a reply. Not every question needs an answer. Not every shot fired needs to be returned. When you respond to everything, you signal that everything has the same weight. It doesn't. Some things are just noise. Silence is how you sort the signal from the noise. You don't owe people your energy just because they aimed a sentence at you, especially when the intent behind it is to bait you. Some people don't want truth, they want conflict. They want to pull you into their spin. When you reply, you feed it. You become part of the show. But when you don't respond, the performance ends. The spotlight dims. They can't work with silence. This doesn't mean you never speak up. It means you know when not to. You know how to spot the difference between a conversation and a trap. If someone's trying to learn, share, understand, you engage. If someone's trying to win, dominate, or rattle you, you let them talk to the air. Silence is especially useful when emotions are high. You're frustrated. Someone said something out of line. You feel the heat rise. But if you speak from that place, it's not clarity, it's reaction. Silence buys space. It gives you a beat to reset. It protects you from saying something you'll wish you hadn't. Sometimes the best reply isn't better words, it's no words. In meetings, silence can cut deeper than any rebuttal. Someone throws shade, challenges you with tone. You pause. You look. You don't rush to fill the air. That silence makes people sit with what was said. It puts the focus back on them. Let them repeat it. Let them clarify. Often they stumble, because silence reveals more than speaking ever could. This works online too. You post something honest. Someone throws a shot. They want to be seen. They want a reaction. You don't reply. You move on. You don't invite them to the table. That silence says everything. It says, you don't have that kind of access. That's a boundary they can't argue with, because you're not in the room anymore. Silence doesn't always feel natural. We're trained to fill gaps, to explain ourselves, to defend every move. But that habit drains you. It puts you in a permanent state of reaction. Silence breaks that loop. It says, I choose when and where I respond. That's control. That's presence. Think of a time you said something just to fill the silence. Maybe you apologized for something that didn't need an apology. Maybe you explained something that didn't need defending. That extra talk didn't help. It gave more ground than you needed to. Now think of a time you said nothing, just paused. Let the comment land. Let the air clear. That probably said more. Silence is also a test. It reveals who needs noise to feel powerful. Some people need to win every exchange. If you don't give them that chance, they collapse. They get louder. They repeat themselves. They unravel because they don't know how to handle stillness. That stillness belongs to you. Use silence in your own head too. You don't need to argue with every thought. When your mind throws doubt, fear, judgment, you don't have to fight it. Let it pass. Don't feed it with more words. That silence makes space for the next thought. You don't need to explain yourself to yourself. You just need to move forward. There's strength in being unbothered, not cold, not passive, just grounded. You hear the comment, you see the tone, and you say nothing. Not because you don't have something to say, but because saying it would give too much away. That kind of silence builds presence. It makes people wonder what you're thinking. It holds weight, not because it's loud, but because it's controlled. You can practice this in small ways. Let a text sit unread. Let a comment sit without response. Let a conversation move on without circling back to clarify something they misunderstood on purpose. Not everything deserves your follow-up. Not everything needs closure. Some things just need to be ignored. That doesn't mean you're letting people walk over you. It means you're choosing your fights. You're not reacting to every swing. You're holding your ground and saving your energy for what actually matters. That's a strategy, not avoidance, not fear, strategy. Use silence as a reset when you're unsure what to say. Use it as a shield when someone tries to throw you off. Use it as a test when you're unsure about someone's intent. Use it as an edge when clarity matters more than noise. You'll notice how often people speak just to speak. You'll notice how rare it is for someone to pause and mean it. That pause becomes your power. That space becomes your strength. The ability to say nothing when everything in you wants to say something is control. That control makes room for better decisions. It protects your peace. It sets the tone. And most of the time, it says more than 100 well-worded comebacks ever could. You're convinced. You've got your facts, your logic, your reasons. You've explained it to yourself 10 different ways. Maybe you've explained it to others too. You feel sharp, certain, steady. But here's the problem. Certainty has a short shelf life when it's not tested. That's why the best question isn't, am I right? The better one is, what if I'm wrong? Not to shake your confidence, but to keep it honest, to strip away ego, to open space for what's actually true, not just what feels true. Asking, what if I'm wrong, doesn't make you weak. It makes you clear. It stops you from doubling down on something just because you've already said it out loud. That moment where you feel the pull to protect your position is where most people dig in. But that's also where learning stalls. You get more interested in winning the argument than seeing clearly. You trade growth for pride. Run this test when you're in a disagreement. You're sure you know why something went wrong. You think the other person missed something obvious. Before you press your point harder, stop and ask yourself, what if I'm wrong? Not as a trick, not as a fake out, as a real check. If I'm wrong, what else could explain this? What piece of the story might I be missing? That pause makes room for curiosity. It softens the edges just enough to let the truth in. Say you're leading a project and someone pushes back. You feel like they're slowing things down. They're nitpicking. They don't get the vision. You start planning how to defend your plan. But if you ask, what if I'm wrong? It opens another door. What if they see something I don't? What if my plan does need another layer of review? That shift changes the tone of the next conversation. You're not coming in to defend, you're coming in to learn. That makes the room smarter, not just louder. It works in solo decisions too. You've made up your mind. You're about to walk away from something or double down on something. Ask the question, what if I'm wrong? What's the cost of being wrong here? What am I assuming without checking? That kind of thinking doesn't slow you down. It sharpens your next step. Because if you can't find a good answer, you're probably on solid ground. And if you can, then you just saved yourself from a blind spot. You can apply it in small daily judgments. You hear something and form a quick opinion about a person, about a situation, about why something happened. You believe your take is obvious, but what if you're wrong? What context are you missing? What bias might be sneaking in? That question doesn't paralyze you. It just makes you a little slower to speak and a little quicker to observe. That shift keeps your mind clean, less cluttered with assumptions, more open to truth. Even when you're right, the what if I'm wrong test can strengthen your case because it forces you to understand the other side well enough to challenge your own view. You're not just repeating your argument, you're testing it. If it holds up under pressure, it's stronger. If it cracks, now you've got something real to work on. Either way, you walk away smarter than you came in. This test also kills the ego that sneaks into improvement. You try a new routine, a new process, a new system. You want it to work, so you believe it is. But the results aren't clear. You keep going, you tweak a few things, but deep down you don't want to admit it might not be the best path. What if I'm wrong cuts through that. It's not shame, it's permission to pivot. It's the reminder that loyalty to the truth is more important than loyalty to your plan. You don't need to ask it with doubt in your voice. You don't need to undermine yourself. Just ask it quietly, in the background. As a check, you can still speak clearly. You can still take action, but with the humility that you might have missed something. That's the difference between being decisive and being stubborn. The test is especially useful when stakes are high, big decisions, public choices. When your reputation is involved, the ego wants to win. It wants to protect the image, not the truth. That's when asking, what if I'm wrong, becomes even more important. It's the guardrail that keeps you from walking off a cliff just because you don't want to backtrack. It's also a filter for feedback. When someone gives you pushback, the knee-jerk reaction is to defend, to explain. But if you're running the what if I'm wrong test in your head, you listen differently. You don't just wait for your turn to speak. You look for the part that might be true. You ask better follow-up questions. You walk away with better data. That's not weakness. That's clarity. This mindset doesn't just help you avoid mistakes. It makes you someone people trust, because you don't cling to your ideas out of pride. You're willing to shift if the evidence shifts. You're steady, but not rigid. And in a world full of loud certainty, that kind of grounded flexibility stands out. You can start practicing this in low-stakes moments. Something small doesn't go as planned. You assume why. Before you lock in, ask, what if I'm wrong? See what else could be true. See what details you missed. Build the habit when the cost is low so you can rely on it when the pressure's higher. Sometimes you'll ask and still believe you're right. That's fine. Now you've earned that belief. You've tested it. You didn't just accept it. You looked it in the eye. That kind of confidence holds better. It's not fragile. It doesn't need to prove itself every 5 minutes. It just works. Most people avoid this question because it feels like opening a door to weakness. But really, it's a door to strength, the kind that lasts, because it's built on truth, not just opinion. So before the next strong stance you take, stop for 1 second and ask yourself, what if I'm wrong? If the answer changes your direction, good. If it confirms your path, even better. Either way, you just traded ego for clarity, and that always pays off. Most people never stop to define what enough looks like. They chase goals, move the finish line, and tell themselves they're just being driven. But when you don't know what enough is, ambition mutates. It stops being a tool and becomes a trap. You start doing more for the sake of more. You push harder, not because the task demands it, but because the hunger won't shut off. And without a clear sense of what's enough, money, praise, progress, achievement, there's no natural stopping point. You just keep going. And slowly, the thing that once gave you energy starts to drain it. Defining enough doesn't kill ambition, it shapes it. It tells it where to go and when to rest. Without that boundary, ambition runs wild. It makes you feel like nothing you do counts unless it's bigger than before. If you made 10 last year, now it has to be 20. If you were praised in one room, now you need a larger one. If the project worked, now it has to scale. It never lets you sit still long enough to appreciate where you are. Start with money. That's the easiest place to lose your sense of enough. You hit a goal, but instead of easing the pace, you raise the bar. You say, I want to be comfortable, but never define what comfort means. You say, I want freedom, but never spell out the number. You let the market, your peers, or your feed decide how far is far enough. That's how earning turns into proving. You stop working to build your life and start working to justify it. Step back and ask, how much is enough for my needs? For the people I care about? For the kind of day I want to live? Write it down. Make it real. It doesn't have to be forever, just enough for now. That line gives you something to work toward and something to stop at. Without it, you'll keep chasing someone else's version of success and never feel like you have it. It's the same with time. You say you want more time to think, more time to rest, but you keep saying yes to everything. You keep adding more. You're afraid of being seen as lazy. You're afraid of falling behind. But at some point, you have to ask, how much work is enough? How many hours do I need to feel focused, effective, and still like myself? If you don't answer that, the default becomes as much as I can give. And that answer never ends. Apply it to attention too. You want to be recognized. You want to be known. That's natural. But if you never define how much is enough, you end up performing all the time. You tweak what you say to get more approval. You take more projects because they look good from the outside. You track likes, mentions, responses, not because they help you grow, but because they prove you're still visible and still relevant. That's when you've crossed from expression to addiction. That's when your sense of self lives in someone else's feed. Defining enough doesn't mean you stop trying. It means you know what you're trying for. It means you can step off the treadmill without feeling like you failed. Some people confuse this with settling. It's not. Settling is saying, this is the best I'll ever get. Enough is saying, this is what I need, and I'll recognize when I've reached it. Use it with goals. If you're building something, a business, a body, a book, define what finished looks like. Not perfect, not legendary, just finished. Enough to say, this works. Otherwise, you'll keep polishing long after the thing is ready. You'll stay stuck in the editing loop, never hitting publish, never letting the work stand. Use it with habits. You say you want to train every day. You say you want to read more, create more, move more. Good. But what's enough? Is 5 pages enough? Is 15 minutes of movement enough? If you don't define it, the habit becomes a guilt machine. You tell yourself you're never doing enough, even when you are. That kills momentum. It turns something sustainable into something stressful. Even relationships need a sense of enough. You want to show up well, be present, be generous. But what's enough look like there? When do you stop trying to fix something? When do you stop bending to keep someone happy? If you don't know your line, you'll cross it. Not once, but over and over. You'll overextend, you'll overgive, and you'll start to wonder why you feel so drained all the time. This question matters most when things are working. That's when people forget to ask it. The money's coming in, the recognition is rising, the goals are landing. That's when you're most likely to lose track of why you started. You keep going, not because you need to, but because you're afraid to stop. You tell yourself you're just being productive. Really, you're being pulled by fear. Fear of falling off, fear of being forgotten, fear of being just okay. But okay can be good. Okay means calm. It means stable. It means not always swinging from extreme to extreme. If you define enough, you give yourself permission to feel okay, to be steady, to step back. That's how you keep building without breaking. This isn't about lowering your standards. It's about grounding them, naming your floor and ceiling, knowing when to go and when to stop. Ambition isn't the enemy. Blind ambition is, the kind that never asks questions, the kind that forgets the goal was to build a better life, not just a bigger list of accomplishments. So take the time, define enough for money, for work, for health, for recognition, for how you spend your time. Write it down, not to lock yourself in, but to know when to breathe. Otherwise, you'll keep chasing, keep proving, keep burning out. Not because you're weak, but because you never gave yourself permission to stop. Clarity brings peace. Peace creates space. And space is what lets ambition do its real job, building something strong, meaningful, and lasting. Not just something that looks good from a distance. Enough doesn't mean small, it means solid, something you can stand on, something you don't have to keep rebuilding from scratch. A thought shows up. It says you're not ready. It says you should have done better. It says everyone else is doing more, doing better, going faster. It sounds familiar. It uses your voice. It feels personal. But that thought is not you. It's something you're experiencing, not something you are. You don't choose most of your thoughts. They show up on their own. You don't plan them. You don't invite them. They just appear like background noise. Some are useful. Some are junk. Some are patterns you've picked up and never questioned. When you believe every thought, you get pulled in directions that don't match who you are or where you're trying to go. You have a mind, but you are not your mind. There's space between you and your thoughts. That space is where choice lives. When you forget that space exists, you treat every thought as a command. Your mind says you're behind, and you believe it. Your mind says you'll fail, and you shrink. But when you remember that you're the one observing the thoughts, not being the thoughts, you gain control. You stop reacting. You start choosing. This isn't about ignoring what your mind says. It's about not being ruled by it. If your knee hurts, you don't assume that pain defines who you are. You listen. You adjust. But you don't become the pain. Thoughts are the same. They're signals, sometimes clear, sometimes scrambled, but you don't have to wear them like a name tag. Think about a moment when your mind told you something harsh. Maybe it said you weren't good enough, that you always mess things up, that you'll never catch up. If a stranger said those things to you, you'd push back. You'd question it. But because the voice comes from inside, you believe it without checking. You take it as fact. And once you believe it, you start acting like it's true. That's how thoughts become limits. You're not trying to shut the thoughts down. You're learning to notice them without grabbing on. The same way you'd watch cars pass on the street. You don't try to stop every one. You just stand on the sidewalk and let them go. Some will pull your attention. Some will pass unnoticed. That's the practice, standing at the edge of your mind without getting pulled into the traffic. This becomes easier when you label what's happening. You feel self-doubt rising. Instead of saying, "I'm not capable," you say, "I'm having the thought that I'm not capable." That small shift creates space. It reminds you that you are observing a thought, not becoming one. You're saying, "This is happening," not "this is me." That's a powerful distinction. It keeps you grounded. You'll still have the thought. You just won't believe it as fast. You won't follow it down the same path. Over time, that makes a difference. You start to move through hard moments without collapsing into them. You start to take action even when your thoughts aren't lining up behind you. That's not denial, that's discipline. This also applies to positive thoughts. You might think, I'm doing great, or I'm ahead of the curve. That feels good, but those thoughts aren't you either. They're conditions. When you tie your identity to those, you feel strong when they're present and weak when they're not. But you're not the thought, you're the one who notices it. That's where real stability comes from. This idea shows up in everyday life. You sit down to write, and your mind says, you don't have anything useful to say. You pause. You feel the pull to walk away, but you don't. You name the thought. You don't fight it. You say, okay, that's what my mind's offering right now. Then you start writing anyway, not because the thought went away, but because it no longer decides your actions. Same thing when you're trying to rest. Your mind says you should be working. It lists everything undone. You feel guilty. But again, you pause. You say, that's a thought, not a command. You return to rest. You're not lazy. You're training your brain to know the difference between thought and truth. This shows up in conflict too. Someone says something that hits a nerve. Your mind fires off a story. They don't respect you. You have to defend yourself. You feel the reaction building, but you catch it. You say, that's a story, not that's reality. You might still speak. You might still push back, but now you're responding, not reacting. You're clear. Even with old patterns, this works. Maybe your mind says you always ruin things or nothing ever works out. Those thoughts might be built from years of repetition, but they're still just thoughts, not fate, not identity. You don't erase them by arguing. You weaken them by not feeding them. You hear them and choose anyway. You're not trying to silence your mind. That never works. The mind doesn't like silence. It likes to fill space. So let it talk. Let it offer up its usual commentary. Just don't follow it every time. Don't give it more credit than it deserves. It's a tool, not a ruler. The mind likes patterns. It repeats what it's practiced. If you've believed a thought 100 times, it'll offer it up again. That doesn't mean it's true. It means it's familiar. Familiar doesn't equal right. It just means it has momentum. You interrupt that momentum by pausing, naming it, and moving on. Some thoughts will keep showing up. That's okay. You're not trying to have a clean slate. You're trying to stop the thoughts from driving the car. They can ride along. They just don't get the wheel. You have thoughts, you have feelings, you have stories your mind tells you when you're tired, when you're stretched, when you're afraid, but none of those things are you. You're the one noticing, the one choosing, the one staying in the moment, even when the mind is spinning. That space, that tiny bit of room between thought and response, is where your freedom lives, where your values live, where your steady decisions get made. You don't need to get rid of the voice in your head. You just need to remember it's not you. You're the one who decides what to do next. You get a message that feels off. The tone is sharp. Maybe it's a short reply. Maybe it's no reply at all. Your chest tightens. You read it again. You feel heat rise behind your eyes. Your fingers hover over the keyboard. You start typing. You want to correct them. You want to defend yourself. You want to say something they'll remember. But before you hit send, pause. Breathe. Just one full breath in, one slow breath out. That breath won't solve the problem, but it might save you from making it worse. When you're angry or stressed, your body shifts into fight mode. It's not subtle. Your muscles tense, your breath shortens, your vision narrows, your brain scans for threat, not nuance. In that state, thinking gets sloppy. Reaction takes over. The story in your head gets louder and sharper. You stop seeing the full picture. You see offense, you see failure, you see disrespect. And from that place, whatever you say or do next is more likely to come from protection than from clarity. Breathing pulls you out of that spiral. It doesn't fix the emotion, it gives it space. It reminds your nervous system that you're not in danger. Not really. Just frustrated. Just caught off guard. That shift gives your brain what it needs to come back online. The frontal part, the part that makes decisions you don't regret. Picture a meeting where someone cuts you off. They jump in while you're making a point. You feel small. You feel dismissed. The next second is critical. You can snap back, you can raise your voice, or you can breathe. Just one breath, in through the nose. slow on the way out. That breath says wait. That breath says don't let them pull you out of your character. You stay in control. You speak from center, not from impulse. You can apply this in personal moments too. You're in a conversation with someone close to you. Something they say hits a nerve. You hear a familiar line, a familiar tone. Your mind starts pulling up old arguments. You feel the need to push back. You feel your voice start to rise. Pause. Breathe first. Let your shoulders drop. That one breath can reset the entire conversation. It can stop the cycle before it starts again. This doesn't mean you bottle things up. It means you don't let heat steer the car. You still speak your mind. You still draw the line. You still hold your ground. But you do it from a place that's clear. A place that's calm enough to hear what's actually being said. A place that can still choose what matters most in the long run. Breathing is basic. It's simple. That's why people overlook it. They want something that sounds advanced. But in high-stress moments, simple is what works. If you can breathe, you can wait. If you can wait, you can choose. If you can choose, you're not controlled by the moment. You own it. Practice it when the stakes are low. You spill something, you forget a password, you lose your place in a call. You feel the small spike of frustration. Don't ignore it. Notice it, breathe. One full breath. That's all. In and out. You're not solving anything yet. You're just proving to yourself that you can stay present. Over time, the habit sticks. You don't have to think about it. The breath comes on its own, right before the reply, right before the response, right before the move you might regret. You've trained yourself to pause, and that pause is a shield, a reset button, a quiet hand on your shoulder saying, not yet, think first. This works during anxiety too, when your thoughts race, when your chest feels tight, when your mind keeps replaying something that hasn't even happened yet. In that moment, thinking more won't help. Breathing will. Slow inhale. Hold for a second. Slow exhale. Do it twice, maybe 3 times. You'll feel your mind stop trying to outrun itself. You'll feel the noise lower just enough to remember what you actually want to do next. Breathing also helps with timing. You might have the right words, you might even be right, but if you deliver it from a charged place, it won't land. People hear tone before they hear content. They feel energy before they process logic. If you come in hot, they close off. If you speak with steadiness, they lean in. That doesn't come from pretending to be calm. It comes from becoming calm. One breath at a time. You don't need to meditate. You don't need a routine. You just need a moment, a second between impulse and action. That second gives you an edge. You're not the one who lashes out and explains later. You're the one who responds when it counts and walks away clear. Try it next time you feel the urge to react fast. You read something, you hear something, you feel something rise. Pause. Breathe. Don't perform the breath. Take it like it matters, like it's the first thing you've done today that's fully yours. That breath says, I'm here. I'm not gone. I'm not lost in the swirl. I'm right here deciding. Most regrets don't come from what you said after thinking. They come from what you said before you did. They come from the heat of the moment, the fast reply, the need to win. The breath breaks that cycle, not by force, just by slowing the rhythm, just by giving your mind a second to see clearly. You can't control everything, but you can control the space between stimulus and response. And sometimes that space is only as wide as a single breath. Take it, let it do its job, then speak, then move, then act like someone who didn't let the moment win. That's how you keep your power. That's how you stay clean. Breath first, think later, every time.